The first gunshot came at dawn. Caleb Vance heard it crack across the valley while he was hauling water from the well, the bucket halfway up when the sound ricocheted off the canyon walls. He froze, rope burning through his palms, and listened. One shot, clean, deliberate. Not a hunter's miss or a warning to coyotes. Someone was making a point. He dropped the bucket and ran toward the north pasture, boots skidding on frost-slicked grass. The sun hadn't crested the ridge yet, and the morning hung gray and cold, the kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there. When he cleared the rise, he saw it. 4 steers down, bloated, foam crusting their mouths, poisoned. Son of a bitch. The words came out flat, empty of the rage burning in his chest. He'd lost 12 head in the past month. 12. At this rate, he wouldn't make it to spring with enough cattle to sell. And whoever was doing this knew it. Barter. Behind him, the cabin door creaked open. Caleb? His mother's voice. Thin, uncertain. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a quilt, her hair loose and gray in the dim light, eyes searching in his general direction but not quite finding him. Stay inside, Ma. He tried to keep his voice steady. It's nothing. Don't lie to a woman who raised you. She took a step forward, barefoot on the porch, and he saw her wince as splinters bit into her heel. I heard the shot. Just a fox. I'll handle it. She didn't move. Her hand gripped the doorframe, knuckles white, and for a moment he thought she might argue. But then her shoulders sagged and she turned back inside, moving with the careful shuffle of someone navigating a world she could no longer fully see. The door closed. Caleb stood there, wind cutting through his shirt, staring at the dead cattle and feeling the weight of everything crushing down. His mother was going blind. Not might go blind. Was going blind. The doctor in town had said cataracts, said there was nothing to be done, said to make her comfortable. That was 4 months ago. Now she could barely make out shapes in daylight, and by nightfall she was completely lost, and he was running out of time. The town knew it too. They watched him the way vultures watch a dying horse, patient, hungry, waiting for the collapse. He'd turned down 5 marriage proposals in the last year. Good women, most of them. Strong backs, practical minds, the kind who could survive out here. But none of them had looked at his mother with anything but pity and calculation. None of them had asked what she needed. They'd asked what the ranch was worth, how much land, how many cattle were left. So he'd said no. Every time. And every time, the town's opinion of him soured a little more. Caleb Vance. The man who refuses the world. Too proud, too damaged, too goddamn stubborn to accept help. Let them talk. He turned away from the dead steers and headed back to the cabin. There was work to do. Always work. Fix the fence in the east pasture, chop wood, check the mare's hoof where she'd been favoring it, bury 4 more cattle, pretend everything wasn't falling apart. Inside, his mother sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't drunk. The cabin was small, 1 main room with a kitchen, a bedroom for her, a loft for him, but it had been built solid. His father's work, every beam hand-cut, every joint tight. The old man had died 10 years back, thrown from a horse and broken his neck, and left Caleb with 200 acres and a stubborn refusal to quit. They're doing it again, aren't they? His mother's voice cut through his thoughts. He poured himself coffee. Doing what? Don't play stupid. It doesn't suit you. He sat down across from her. Her eyes were clouded now, the blue almost gray, but they still found him more often than not. Muscle memory. A mother's instinct. Yeah, he said finally. 4 head. Poison, looks like. She nodded slowly. How many does that make? 16 total. And you still don't know who. I've got suspicions. Suspicions don't hold up in court, and you know it. She took a sip of coffee, grimaced. This is cold. I'll heat it up. Leave it. She set the cup down. Caleb, you need to get married. Here we go. Ma, don't ma me. You're 32 years old. This ranch needs a woman's hand, and I need... She stopped, drew a breath. I need to know you won't be alone when I'm gone. You're not going anywhere. I'm going blind, boy. And we both know what that means out here. Her voice cracked, just slightly, before she pulled it back under control. I can't cook anymore. Can't sew. Can barely find my way to the outhouse without help. I'm a burden. You're my mother. And you're wasting your life playing nursemaid to a dying woman. The words hit like a slap. He stared at her, jaw tight, and saw tears tracking down her weathered cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. I've turned down marriage proposals because none of them were right, he said quietly. None of them gave a damn about you. They just wanted the land. Maybe that's all you're going to get. Then I'll die alone. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're your father's son, stubborn as a mule and twice as mean when cornered. He taught me not to settle. He also taught you that pride's a luxury you can't afford. She reached across the table, found his hand, gripped it hard. I'm not asking you to marry someone you don't love. I'm asking you to survive. Because if you go down, everything he built goes with you. Caleb pulled his hand away, stood. I need to bury those steers. Running won't fix this. Neither will talking about it. He grabbed his coat and walked out before she could respond. The cold hit him like a fist, but he welcomed it, anything to clear his head. The town of Ridgewater sat in a valley between two mountain ranges, a collection of wooden buildings and mud streets that turned to soup every spring. It had started as a mining camp 20 years back, boomed briefly when silver was found, then settled into slow decline when the veins ran dry. Now it survived on cattle and stubbornness, a place where people came to disappear or die, and sometimes both. Caleb rode in 3 days later for supplies. He needed salt, flour, lamp oil, things they couldn't make or grow. The general store sat at the center of town, a squat building with a sagging porch, and windows so grimy you could barely see through them. Inside, the owner, a barrel-chested man named Polk, looked up from his ledger and grunted. Vance. Polk. Heard you lost more cattle. News traveled fast in small towns, especially bad news. Yeah, Caleb set his list on the counter. Need these items. Polk glanced at the list, then at Caleb. You planning to pay today or add it to your tab? Tab. Tab's getting pretty long, Vance. I'll pay after the spring sale. If you make it to the spring sale. Polk leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Word is you're about done. Another month of losses and you'll be selling that ranch to cover debts. Caleb kept his face neutral. Word says a lot of things. Word also says you're turning down every decent woman in the county. Sarah Morrison was willing, you know. Good cook. Strong back. Her father's got money. Sarah Morrison talks too much. Beggars can't be choosers. Caleb felt the anger rise, hot and sharp, but he swallowed it down. Getting into a fight wouldn't help, and Polk was the only store for 30 miles. Just fill the order, he said quietly. Polk stared at him for a long moment, then shrugged and turned to gather supplies. While he worked, Caleb let his gaze drift around the store. Barrels of flour and sugar, coils of rope, tools hanging on the wall, and in the corner, near the stove, 3 men sat playing cards. He recognized them immediately. Garrett Thorne, 40s, sharp dresser, owned half the businesses in town and most of the land outside it. He smiled when he saw Caleb looking, a lazy, confident smile that made Caleb's skin crawl. Next to him sat his enforcer, a man named Cutter. No first name that anyone knew. Just Cutter. Scarred knuckles, dead eyes. The kind of man who did work other men didn't want their names attached to. And the third, younger, nervous, was Thorne's nephew. Reed, barely 20 and trying too hard to look tough. Thorne set down his cards. Caleb Vance, hell of a streak of bad luck you've been having. Caleb didn't answer. 16 cattle in a month, Thorne continued. That's gotta sting. Especially with your ma in the state she's in. My business is my business. Sure. But see, that's where you're wrong. Thorne leaned back in his chair, boots propped on a barrel. Your business becomes everyone's business when you owe money all over town. Polk here, the doc, the blacksmith. Hell, even the undertaker's probably got his eye on you. Reed snickered. Cutter didn't react at all. Caleb felt his hands curl into fists. Say what you came to say, Thorne. I'm just offering a solution. I'll buy your land, fair price. Enough to pay off your debts and set you and your ma up somewhere comfortable. You can't run that ranch alone, and we both know it. Not interested. You will be. Another month, maybe 2, and you'll come crawling. Might as well take the offer while it's generous. I said no. Thorne's smile didn't waver. Your funeral. Polk finished packing the supplies and set them on the counter. $18. Caleb signed the ledger, adding another line to his debt, and gathered the bags. As he turned to leave, Thorne called out, "Oh, Vance, you might want to check your south fence. Heard some of the wire looked a little loose." Caleb stopped, looked back. Thorne was grinning now, cards forgotten. "Just a friendly tip," Thorne said. "Neighborly concern and all." Caleb walked out without responding. His hands shook as he loaded the supplies onto his horse. Rage, helplessness, fear, all of it churning together until he couldn't tell one from the other. He rode home fast, pushing the horse harder than he should have, and when he reached the south fence he found exactly what he expected. Cut wire, 20 feet of it, and his remaining cattle scattered across open range, vulnerable to rustlers, predators, and whatever else Thorne decided to throw at him. Mara Holloway watched from the edge of the trees as Caleb Vance worked to repair his fence. She'd been tracking him for 2 days now, staying out of sight, learning his patterns. When he woke, where he worked, how long he stayed away from the cabin. She knew the town called her strange, knew they whispered when she passed. The Holloway girl, parents dead from fever when she was 12, raised by her grandmother, a woman who knew plants and remedies and things polite society didn't talk about. When the old woman died 3 years back, Mara inherited the cabin, the knowledge, and the reputation. She didn't mind. Let them talk. But this, what she was about to do, required more than knowledge. It required nerve and timing and a willingness to risk everything on a gamble that could just as easily destroy her. She waited until Caleb finished the fence and rode back toward the cabin. Then she moved. The ride took less than an hour. She knew these mountains better than anyone, knew the hidden trails and shortcuts that cut travel time in half. By the time she reached the Vance property, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and copper. She dismounted near the barn, tied her horse, took a breath. Then she walked to the cabin door and knocked. Silence. She knocked again. The door opened. Caleb stood there, shirt half unbuttoned, suspicion written across every line of his face. Mara Holloway. His voice was flat. "What the hell do you want?" She met his eyes, didn't flinch. "I want to help your mother." "We don't need help. She's going blind." The doc's an idiot." Mara kept her voice level. "Cataracts can be treated. Not cured, but treated. Slowed. Maybe even reversed if we're lucky." Caleb stared at her. "You're serious. I don't make jokes about people's lives. And what do you want in return?" There it was, the question everyone asked, because nothing in this world came free, and they both knew it. "Nothing you're not willing to give," she said carefully. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now." He started to close the door. "We're done here." "Wait." She put her hand on the door. "Your mother's getting worse. You know it. Another few months and she'll be completely blind. After that..." She trailed off. Let him fill in the blanks. His jaw tightened. "Why do you care?" "Because someone should." "Bullshit. Nope, nobody does anything out of kindness. Not out here." "Then maybe I'm nobody." She pulled her hand back. "Let me try. If it doesn't work, you're no worse off than you are now. If it does what? You become a miracle worker? Get to hold it over my head for the rest of my life? If it does, your mother gets to see again." Mara's voice hardened. "That's what matters, not your pride, not your distrust, her." They stood there in the doorway, the cold wind cutting between them, and for a moment Mara thought he might actually slam the door in her face. She'd practiced this conversation a dozen times in her head, but none of her rehearsals had prepared her for the sheer weight of his suspicion. Then, from inside the cabin, a voice called out, "Who is it, Caleb?" His mother. Caleb's expression shifted. Something cracked in the armor he wore. "Just someone selling something we don't need. Let me decide that." Footsteps. Slow. Careful. And then she appeared beside him, one hand on his arm for balance, eyes searching the darkness beyond the door. "Who are you, girl?" "Mara Holloway, ma'am." "Old Ruth's granddaughter?" "Yes, ma'am." The older woman's face softened. "I knew your grandmother. Good woman. Helped me deliver Caleb when the midwife couldn't get through the snow." She paused. What brings you out here? Mara swallowed. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. I think I can help you see again. The silence that followed was suffocating. Caleb's mother stood very still, her clouded eyes locked somewhere near Mara's face, and for a long moment no one spoke. Then she laughed, a soft, sad sound. Girl, if you're selling hope, I can't afford it. I'm not selling anything. I'm offering. And what's the catch? There isn't one. Everyone's got a catch. Not me. Caleb's mother tilted her head, considering. Then she reached out, found Mara's hand, and held it. Her grip was strong despite the tremor. You feel like your grandmother, she said quietly. Same calluses, same scars from handling plants. She paused. Can you really help me? I don't know, Mara admitted, but I'd like to try. Ma, don't. Caleb started, but his mother cut him off. Hush. This is my choice. She squeezed Mara's hand. What do you need? Time, space, and your trust. How long? A week. Maybe 2. Caleb stepped between them. Absolutely not. I don't know you, don't trust you, and I'm not letting some stranger… Caleb, his mother's voice was steel. Let her try. Ma, I said let her try. She released Mara's hand and turned toward her son. What's the worst that happens? It doesn't work and I'm still going blind? That's already happening. At least this way I'll know we tried everything. And if she makes it worse? Then I'll die knowing I took a chance instead of sitting here waiting for the darkness. She reached up, found his face, held it between her hands. I'm tired of being afraid, boy. Let me do this. Caleb looked at Mara over his mother's shoulder. His eyes were hard, calculating, searching for the lie. Mara didn't look away. Finally, he stepped back. 1 week, he said. You've got 1 week. If she gets worse, you're gone. And if you're running some kind of con, I'm not. I'll make sure everyone in Ridgewater knows what you did. Mara nodded. Fair enough. Caleb's mother smiled. Then it settled. Come inside, girl. Let's get you some supper. And just like that, Mara crossed the threshold into the Vance cabin, carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel and the weight of everything she'd promised. The door closed behind her with a sound like fate snapping shut. That night, Mara worked by lamplight while Caleb watched from across the room. She'd laid out her supplies on the kitchen table. Dried herbs, tinctures, small glass vials filled with liquids that caught the light. His mother sat in a chair near the stove, hands folded in her lap, patient and still. This is going to hurt, Mara said, mixing something in a small bowl. How much? The older woman asked. A lot. Can you be more specific? Mara hesitated. It's going to feel like your eyes are on fire. The pain will be intense. It'll last anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, depending on how your body reacts. Caleb stood. No, absolutely not. Caleb, his mother started. I'm not letting you torture her. Mara looked up from her work. It's not torture, it's treatment. The cataracts are thick. Breaking them down requires strong medicine, and strong medicine burns. Find another way. There isn't one. Not if you want results. Then we'll live without results. Caleb, sit down. His mother's voice cracked like a whip. This is my decision, not yours. Ma, please. I said sit down. He didn't sit, but he didn't leave either, just stood there, hands clenched, radiating helpless fury. Mara finished mixing. The paste in the bowl was dark green, almost black, with a smell like bitter almonds and something sharper underneath. She dipped a clean cloth into it, wrung out the excess, then looked at Caleb's mother. Are you ready? As I'll ever be. Lie back. Close your eyes. Don't open them no matter what. The older woman settled back in the chair, head tilted up. Mara leaned over her, hands steady, and applied the first cloth to her right eye. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then Caleb's mother gasped. Her back arched. Her hands flew to her face, but Mara caught them. Don't touch. I know it hurts. I know, but don't touch. Oh God, it's… The words dissolved into a scream. Caleb lunged forward, but Mara blocked him with her body. Get back, she snapped. You're killing her. I'm saving her. Now get back or get out. He stood there, vibrating with rage and fear, and watched as his mother writhed in the chair, fingers digging into the armrests, throat raw from screaming. Tears streamed down her face. Her whole body shook. Mara held the cloth in place, counting under her breath. 30 seconds. 45. A minute. Finally, she removed it. Caleb's mother collapsed back, gasping, sweat-soaked and trembling. Done, Mara said quietly. The first one's done. First? Caleb's voice was hoarse. You're doing it again? Both eyes need treatment. No, she can't take it. I can. His mother's voice was barely a whisper. Do it. Ma, do it now, before I lose my nerve. Mara didn't hesitate. She prepared the second cloth and applied it to the left eye. This time, Caleb's mother bit down on a leather strap Mara had given her. This time, the screams were muffled, but they still echoed in the small cabin, bouncing off the walls, burrowing into Caleb's skull. He watched, helpless, hating himself for allowing this, hating Mara for doing it, hating the world for making it necessary. When it was finally over, his mother lay in the chair like a broken thing, chest heaving, face pale and slick with sweat. Mara cleaned her tools in silence. Then she turned to Caleb. She needs rest. Don't let her open her eyes for at least 6 hours. Keep the room dark. Give her water if she asks, but nothing else. And then we wait. For what? To see if it worked. Caleb looked at his mother. She'd passed out finally, her breathing shallow but steady. If she doesn't make it, he started. She'll make it. You don't know that. No, Mara admitted, but I believe it. And sometimes that's enough. She gathered her things and moved toward the door. Caleb followed. Where are you going? To sleep. There's a lean-to by the barn. I'll stay there. You could... He stopped, swallowed. You could take the loft. She looked at him, surprised. You trust me that much? I don't trust you at all, but you just put my mother through hell. Least I can do is offer you a bed. Mara almost smiled. The lean-to's fine. I prefer it. Suit yourself. She opened the door, then paused. Caleb? What? She's stronger than you think. I know how strong she is. Then start acting like it. She left before he could respond, disappearing into the darkness, and Caleb stood in the doorway watching her go. Behind him, his mother stirred, murmured something he couldn't make out. He closed the door, bolted it, and sat down in the chair beside her. I'm here, Ma, he whispered. I'm right here. She didn't answer, but her hand found his and held tight. And outside, hidden in the shadows beyond the barn, Garrett Thorne's nephew Reed watched the cabin through a spyglass and smiled. Things were about to get interesting. Caleb didn't sleep. He sat in that chair beside his mother through the entire night, watching the rise and fall of her chest, listening for any change in her breathing. Every few minutes he'd lean close, check her pulse, wipe the sweat from her forehead with a damp cloth. The lamplight threw shadows across her face, making the lines deeper, the gray in her hair more pronounced. She looked old, fragile, nothing like the woman who'd raised him through blizzards and droughts and the kind of hardship that broke lesser people. Around 3 a.m, she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Don't, Caleb said quietly, placing his hand over hers. Mara said to keep them closed. His mother's fingers twitched against his palm. Caleb? I'm here. How long? Few more hours. Sun's not up yet. She drew a shaky breath. Still burns. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be. Her voice was rough, scraped raw from screaming. I chose this. You shouldn't have had to. She almost smiled. Life's full of things we shouldn't have to do. Doesn't mean we get a pass. She paused, swallowed. Is she still here? The Holloway girl? She's in the barn. You were rude to her. I was cautious. You were rude. His mother shifted, trying to get comfortable. Your father would have offered her the house. My father would have run her off with a shotgun. Your father was a lot of things, but he wasn't cruel to people trying to help. She coughed, winced. Get me some water. Caleb poured from the pitcher on the table, held the cup to her lips. She drank slowly, carefully, then pushed it away. Enough. She settled back. Tell me about her. Who, Mara? No, the Queen of England. Yes, Mara. Caleb set the cup down. What do you want to know? Is she pretty? Ma, it's a simple question. He thought about it. Mara Holloway wasn't pretty in the way the town girls were pretty, with their carefully pinned hair and Sunday dresses. She was lean and hard, all angles and sharp edges, with hands that bore the scars of someone who worked with thorns and fire. Her hair hung loose and dark, usually tied back with whatever she had handy. Her eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds, and they looked at you like they could see straight through to the bone. I don't know, he said finally. I guess. His mother laughed, then winced again. You're useless at this. At what? Noticing people. She reached out, found his face, patted his cheek. She came here alone, at night, to help a woman she barely knows. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. His mother's hand fell away. Promise me something. What? If this works, if I can see again, you'll give her a fair chance. A fair chance at what? Don't play dumb. You know what I mean. Caleb stood abruptly. I'm not marrying someone just because she helped you. I didn't say marry her. I said give her a fair chance. Talk to her. Get to know her. Stop treating everyone like they're trying to rob you blind. People are trying to rob me blind. Not everyone. His mother's voice softened. You've got good instincts, boy, but they've made you hard. There's a difference between being careful and being closed off. Caleb didn't answer. He walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. The moon was down now, and the stars were cold and distant. Somewhere out there, Mara Holloway was sleeping in his barn, and he had no idea what to make of her. His mother was right about one thing, though. It did take courage to show up uninvited and offer help that might not work. Most people wouldn't bother. They'd watch from a distance, wait for the collapse, then swoop in to pick the bones clean. But Mara had walked right up to his door and knocked. He didn't know what that meant yet, but he was starting to think it might mean something. When dawn finally broke, gray and cold, Caleb heard movement from the barn. He went to the door, opened it, and saw Mara leading her horse toward the well. She'd slept in her clothes and her hair was tangled, but she moved with the kind of easy confidence that came from being comfortable in your own skin. She saw him watching and nodded. Morning. Morning. He stepped out onto the porch. Ma's still asleep. Good. She needs it. Mara filled a bucket, let the horse drink. How's she doing? Says it still burns. It will, for another day or two. She stroked the horse's neck absently. But that's normal. The medicine's working through the cataracts, breaking them down. It's supposed to hurt. Doesn't make it easier to watch. No, Mara agreed. It doesn't. They stood there in silence for a moment, the morning stretching out between them. Finally, Caleb cleared his throat. You want coffee? Mara looked surprised. You offering? Don't make me regret it. She tied off the horse and followed him inside. The cabin was warm from the stove, and his mother was still asleep in the chair, covered with blankets. Mara checked her pulse, her breathing, then nodded to herself. She's strong, Mara said quietly. Stronger than most. Caleb poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. She took it, wrapped her hands around the warmth, and for the first time he got a good look at her in daylight. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe 25, 26, but there was something old in her eyes, something that came from seeing too much too soon. How long have you been doing this? He asked. The medicine, I mean. Since I was 12. My grandmother taught me. She sipped the coffee, grimaced. This is terrible. Take it or leave it. I'll take it. She leaned against the table. Your mother mentioned you turned down 5 marriage proposals. Town gossip travels fast. It's a small town, not much else to talk about. She paused. Why'd you say no? That's my business. Fair enough. She drank more coffee, watching him over the rim of the cup. People think you're too proud. I know what people think. Are they right? Caleb set his cup down harder than he meant to. You got a point to make, or are you just here to pry? I'm here because your mother's going blind and I can help. But if we're going to be living in the same space for the next week, we might as well be civil. She met his eyes. So I'll ask again, why'd you turn them down? He wanted to tell her to go to hell, wanted to throw her out and deal with this mess on his own. But something in the way she asked, direct, no judgment, just curiosity, made him answer honestly. Because none of them cared about her, he said. They saw a dying woman and a ranch going under, and they figured they could swoop in and take over. They didn't ask about her needs, didn't ask what she wanted, just talked about how they'd run things better, how they'd make the ranch profitable again. And that made you angry. Damn right it did. He rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. She's not dead yet, and even if she was, this place isn't for sale. Not to them, not to anyone. Mara nodded slowly. You're loyal. That's rare. It's called not being a bastard. Same thing out here. She finished her coffee, set the cup down. I need to check on her eyes in a few hours. Until then, try to keep the room dark. And if she wakes up and wants to open them, I'll stop her. Good. Mara moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Turning them down. Doesn't feel right when I'm watching the ranch fall apart. Nothing worth keeping ever feels easy. She pulled the door open, let in a blast of cold air. I'll be back around noon. She left. Caleb stood there in the silence, staring at the closed door, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The answer came 3 hours later when Reed Thorne showed up with 2 men Caleb didn't recognize. He was in the barn, mucking stalls, when he heard horses. 3 riders coming up the valley trail, moving slow and deliberate. Caleb set down the pitchfork, wiped his hands on his pants, and walked out to meet them. Reed sat in the center, flanked by the 2 strangers. Both were rough-looking men with hard faces and guns on their hips. Ranch hands, maybe, or drifters. The kind of men you hired when you needed muscle and didn't care about asking questions. Vance, Reed said, grinning. Hell of a morning. Caleb crossed his arms. State your business. Just being neighborly. Heard your ma took a turn for the worse. Reed's grin widened. Heard you brought in some kind of witch doctor to fix her. Who I bring in is my concern. Sure. But see, my uncle's worried about you. Thinks maybe you're getting desperate. Making bad decisions. Your uncle can worry about his own problems. Oh, he does. Trust me. Reed glanced at the 2 men beside him, then back at Caleb. Thing is, desperate men do stupid things, and stupid things have consequences. Caleb felt his jaw tighten. You threatening me? Nah. Just stating facts? Reed leaned forward in his saddle. You've lost what, 16 head now? Maybe more? Ranch can't sustain that kind of loss. Another month and you'll be bankrupt. My uncle's offer still stands. Sell now, walk away clean. I'm not selling. You will. Everyone does, eventually. Reed straightened. Just thought I'd give you a friendly reminder before things get worse. Get off my land. We're going. Reed turned his horse, the 2 men following. But before they rode off, he looked back. Oh, and Vance, might want to check your water supply. Heard there's been some contamination issues in the area. They rode away, kicking up dust, and Caleb stood there watching them go, his heart hammered in his chest. Water contamination. That wasn't a warning. That was a threat. He ran to the well, hauled up a bucket, and immediately smelled it. Bitter. Chemical. Someone had poisoned the goddamn well. Son of a bitch. He dumped the water, his mind racing. The well was their only water source. Without it, they couldn't cook, couldn't clean, couldn't survive. And cleaning a poisoned well took time, effort, and resources he didn't have. Behind him, the cabin door opened. His mother stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame for balance. Caleb, what's wrong? He forced his voice to stay calm. Nothing. Go back inside. Don't lie to me. Ma, please. The well's poisoned, isn't it? She didn't wait for an answer. I heard the horses. Heard that little bastard Reed talking. She stepped forward, barefoot on the cold ground. Caleb, this has to stop. I'll handle it. You can't handle it alone, not anymore. Her voice cracked. We need help. We've got help, Mars. I'm not talking about my eyes. I'm talking about the ranch, about Thorne. She moved closer, her clouded eyes searching for him. He's going to destroy us piece by piece until there's nothing left. And if we don't fight back, we're done. Caleb caught her arm, steadied her. I won't let that happen. Then stop being stubborn and ask for help. From who? The town. They're either on Thorne's payroll or too scared to cross him. Then look elsewhere. She gripped his arm hard. There's always someone willing to help if you know where to look. Before he could respond, Mara came riding up the trail. She took one look at the dumped water, the expression on Caleb's face, and dismounted. What happened? Well's poisoned, Caleb said flatly. Mara swore under her breath. How bad? Bad enough. He kicked the bucket. Thorne's men were just here, made sure I knew it was intentional. Can you clean it? Yeah, but it'll take days, and we don't have days. Mara thought for a moment, then nodded. There's a spring about 2 miles north, up in the hills. Water's clean. I've used it before. That's on disputed land. Thorne claims it. Thorne claims a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. She grabbed her horse's reins. I'll take you there. We can haul water until the well's clean. Caleb hesitated. His mother was right. He couldn't do this alone, and Mara was offering help without asking for anything in return. That had to count for something. All right, he said. Let's go. They rode north, following a narrow trail that wound up through pine trees and rocky outcroppings. The air was colder here, sharp and clean, and the silence was broken only by the sound of hooves on stone. Mara led the way, her horse sure-footed on the uneven ground, and Caleb followed, trying not to think about what would happen if Thorne found out they were using the spring. After about 30 minutes, they reached it. The spring bubbled up from a crack in the rocks, forming a small pool before spilling down the mountainside. The water was crystal clear, cold enough to make your teeth ache. Mara dismounted, filled a canteen, and drank. Cleanest water in the valley. My grandmother used to say it came straight from the mountain's heart. Caleb knelt beside the pool, cupped his hands, and drank. She was right. It tasted pure, untouched. How often did you come here? He asked. A few times a week, when I needed water for medicine. She sat on a rock, looking out over the valley below. My grandmother brought me here when I was a kid, taught me which plants grew nearby, which ones were safe, which ones could kill you. She sounds like she was something. She was. Mara's voice softened. Toughest woman I ever knew. Buried 3 husbands, raised 4 kids, and outlived most of her enemies. When she died, half the town showed up to the funeral. The other half celebrated. Why? Because she didn't play by their rules, didn't bow, didn't break. Mara picked up a stone, turned it over in her hands. She taught me that the world will always try to make you smaller. The trick is not letting it. Caleb sat beside her. Is that why you came to help my mother? To prove something? No, I came because it was the right thing to do. She tossed the stone into the pool, watched the ripples spread. But if it proves something along the way, I won't complain. They sat in silence for a while, watching the water, and Caleb found himself noticing things he hadn't before. The way Mara's hands never stopped moving, always fidgeting with something, a rock, a piece of grass, the hem of her coat. The way she looked at the world like she was cataloging it, filing away details for later use. The way she didn't fill the silence with meaningless chatter. She was nothing like the women who'd come seeking his hand, nothing like anyone he'd ever met. Why aren't you married? He asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's none of my business. Mara didn't seem offended. Same reason you aren't, probably. Nobody worth marrying. The town must have tried. Oh, they tried. Plenty of men willing to overlook my reputation if it meant getting access to my grandmother's land. She smiled bitterly. But I'm not interested in being someone's stepping stone. Smart or stubborn, depends who you ask. She stood, brushed off her pants. We should head back. Your mother will be waking soon, and I need to check her eyes. They filled every container they'd brought, buckets, canteens, even cooking pots, and loaded them onto the horses. The ride back was slower, weighed down with water, but they made it without incident. When they reached the cabin, Caleb's mother was awake and sitting at the table. Her eyes were still closed, bandaged with clean cloth, but she turned her head when they entered. You're back. We're back, Caleb confirmed. Brought clean water from the spring. The one Thorne claims? That's the one. His mother smiled. Good. Let him try to stop us. Mara set down her bags and moved to the older woman's side. I need to check the bandages. This might be uncomfortable. Everything's uncomfortable these days. Go ahead. Slowly, carefully, Mara unwrapped the cloth. Caleb held his breath. His mother's eyes were still closed, the lids red and swollen. Open them, Mara said quietly. Slowly. His mother's eyelids fluttered, hesitated, then opened. For a moment, nothing happened. She blinked, winced, blinked again. Her eyes were bloodshot, the white streaked with red, but the cloudiness, the thick gray film that had been stealing her sight, was thinner, noticeably thinner. "Can you see?" Caleb asked, his voice rough. His mother turned toward him, her eyes focused, sharpened. "I can see your face," she whispered. "Oh, sweet heaven, I can see your face." Tears spilled down her cheeks, Caleb's too. He dropped to his knees beside her chair, and she reached out, touched his face with trembling fingers. "You need a shave," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I know, and you look exhausted." "I am." She cupped his face, studied him like she was memorizing every line. Then she turned to Mara. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you." Mara nodded, throat tight. "It's not finished yet. The cloudiness is better, but it's not gone. We'll need to repeat the treatment." "I don't care. I can see." She looked around the cabin, taking in details she'd been missing. The crack in the wall near the stove, the new curtains Caleb had hung, the dust on the windowsill. "I can see." Caleb stood, walked to the door, and stepped outside before anyone could see him fall apart. He leaned against the porch railing, breathing hard, and let the relief wash over him. His mother could see. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to read. Enough to navigate. Enough to keep living. Mara followed him out a few minutes later. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him and watched the sun climb over the mountains. "You did good," Caleb said finally. "We're not done yet." "I know, but still." He looked at her. "Thank you." She nodded. Didn't make a big deal out of it, just accepted the gratitude and moved on. That was when they heard the gunshot. It came from the south pasture, a single crack that echoed across the valley. Caleb's head snapped up. Mara's hand went to the knife at her belt. "Stay here," Caleb said. "Like hell." Mara was already moving toward the horses. They rode hard, cutting across open ground toward the sound. When they crested the rise, Caleb saw smoke, a thin black column rising from what used to be his hay barn. The structure was fully engulfed, flames licking up the dry wood, sending sparks into the sky. And standing near it, watching it burn, was Cutter. Thorne's enforcer turned when he heard them approach. He didn't run, didn't even look concerned, just stood there, hands in his pockets, like he was admiring his work. Caleb dismounted before his horse even stopped. "You son of a bitch," Cutter shrugged. "Boss said to send a message." "Consider it sent." Caleb's hands curled into fists. "Now get the hell off my land." "Or what? You'll hit me?" Cutter smiled. "Go ahead. Give me a reason." Mara grabbed Caleb's arm. "Don't, he's baiting you." "I don't care." "Well, I do. You hit him, Thorne gets exactly what he wants. An excuse to bring the law down on you." She looked at Cutter. "Leave. Now." Cutter's smile widened. "You must be the witch. Heard about you. Heard you got lucky with the old woman's eyes." "Luck had nothing to do with it." "Sure. Whatever helps you sleep." He started walking toward his horse, then paused. "Oh, Vance? Boss wanted me to remind you. The offer expires end of the month. After that, all bets are off." He rode away, and Caleb stood there watching the barn burn, watching months of stored hay go up in smoke, and felt something snap inside him. "I'm going to kill him," he said quietly. "No, you're not." Mara's voice was steel. "Because that's what they want. They want you angry, want you reckless, want you to make a mistake they can use against you. Then what the hell am I supposed to do?" "Fight smart." She turned to face him. "Thorne's powerful, but he's not invincible. Men like him always have weaknesses. We just need to find his." "We? You think I'm walking away now?" Mara's eyes flashed. "They poisoned your well, burned your barn. Your mother's recovering because of me, which means they'll come after me next. Like it or not, we're in this together." Caleb stared at her. She was right. Of course she was right, but admitting it meant trusting her, and trust didn't come easy. Still, he'd watched her put his mother through hell to save her sight, watched her ride into disputed territory to bring him water, watched her stand up to Cutter without flinching. Maybe trust wasn't the issue. Maybe the issue was whether he had the courage to accept help when it was offered. "All right," he said. "We fight smart, but I'm going to need you to tell me how." Mara smiled. It was a fierce, feral thing that made her look dangerous in a way he hadn't seen before. "First thing we do," she said, "is figure out what Thorn's really after. Because this isn't just about your land. There's something bigger happening here, and we're going to find out what." The barn collapsed behind them, sending up a shower of sparks that lit the afternoon sky like dying stars. And somewhere in Ridgewater, Garrett Thorne sat in his office and poured himself a drink, certain that victory was only a matter of time. He was wrong. That night, Mara sat at the kitchen table with a hand-drawn map spread between her and Caleb. His mother had gone to bed early, exhausted from the day's events, but able to see well enough now to navigate the cabin on her own. The improvement was remarkable, almost unsettling in its speed. Outside, the wind howled through the valley, carrying the acrid smell of burned hay. "Thorne owns half the businesses in town," Mara said, marking X's on the map with a stub of pencil. "The general store, the saloon, the livery, he's got his fingers in everything." Caleb leaned over the map, studying it. "What about the land? How much does he actually own?" "Last I heard, about 3,000 acres, most of it north and west of town." She tapped the map. "But here's the thing. 5 years ago, he owned maybe 500 acres. He's been buying up properties like crazy, and nobody knows why. Maybe he just wants to be the big man. Men like Thorne don't spend that kind of money on ego. There's something else." Mara chewed her bottom lip, thinking. "My grandmother used to say that land only matters if you can use it. So what's he using it for?" Caleb sat back, rubbing his eyes. He was tired. Bone tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from weeks of fighting a losing battle. "Cattle, I guess. Same as everyone else." "But he's not running cattle. Not on most of it." Mara pulled out another scrap of paper, this one covered in numbers. "I've been watching, keeping track. He's got maybe 200 head total spread across all that land. That's nothing. Your 200 acres supports more cattle than his 3,000. So what's he doing with it?" "That's what we need to find out." She folded the map, tucked it into her jacket. "I'm going into town tomorrow, talk to some people, see what I can dig up." "Alone?" "I work better alone." "Mara, if Thorne finds out you're asking questions, he won't. I know how to be quiet." She stood, stretched. "Besides, you need to stay here. Watch your mother. Make sure nothing else gets burned down." Caleb wanted to argue, but she was right. He couldn't leave the ranch undefended. Not now. "Be careful." "Always am." She headed toward the door, then paused. "Your mother's doing well, by the way. Better than I expected. One more treatment should do it." "When?" "Tomorrow night, after I get back." She pulled on her coat. "Try to get some sleep, Caleb. You look half dead." "Feel worse than that." She almost smiled. "Yeah, I bet you do." After she left, Caleb sat alone in the silence, staring at the cold stove and thinking about everything that had happened in the past few days. His world had tilted sideways. A week ago, he'd been alone, drowning slowly, watching his mother fade and his ranch crumble. Now there was Mara. Complicated, fierce, impossible to read Mara. She'd walked into his life like a storm and upended everything. He didn't know if that was good or bad yet, but he knew one thing for certain. She was right about fighting smart, because fighting angry had gotten him nowhere except deeper in debt and closer to losing everything. Morning came gray and cold. Caleb spent the early hours cleaning the well, hauling out contaminated water bucket by bucket, and scrubbing the stone walls with lye soap. It was miserable work, made worse by the knowledge that Thorne's men could poison it again whenever they wanted. But he did it anyway, because giving up wasn't an option. His mother came out around midday, moving carefully but confidently, her vision still blurred but functional. She watched him work for a while, then brought him water from the spring. "You're going to work yourself to death," she said. "Somebody's got to do it." "Where's Mara?" "Town, digging up information on Thorne." His mother nodded slowly. "She's a brave girl." "She's reckless." "Same thing sometimes." She sat on the edge of the well, looking out at the valley. "I like her." Don't ma me. I like her. She's got spine, And she doesn't take your nonsense, which is refreshing. She paused. You could do worse. Caleb dropped the bucket. We're not having this conversation. Why not? You're both single, both stubborn as mules, both too proud for your own good. Seems like a natural fit. She's helping you, that's all. Is it? His mother's clouded eyes found his face. Or is it something else? It's not anything. He picked up the bucket, scrubbed harder. Drop it, she smiled. All right, but mark my words, boy. That girl's something special. And if you're too blind to see it, you're a bigger fool than your father was. She walked back to the cabin, leaving Caleb standing there with soap on his hands and thoughts he didn't want to examine too closely. In town, Mara moved through the streets like a ghost. She'd learned early that being invisible was a skill, and she'd gotten good at it. People saw what they expected to see. A plain woman in plain clothes, unremarkable, forgettable. She used that now, slipping into the general store and pretending to browse while listening to the conversations around her. Polk was behind the counter, weighing out flour for a customer. Two men stood near the stove, talking low. Heard Vance's barn burned down. Serves him right. Stubborn bastard should have sold when he had the chance. Thorne's getting impatient. Thorne's always impatient. Man wants what he wants, and he wants it now. Mara picked up a tin of coffee, examined it like it was the most interesting thing in the world. The men kept talking. You hear about the railroad? Her ears perked up. What about it? Surveyors came through last month, marking routes. Rumor is they're planning a line straight through the valley. Bullshit. Why would they route through here? Mining. New silver strike up in the northern range. If they can get the ore out fast, it's worth millions. And Thorne knows about this? Thorne knows everything. Why do you think he's been buying up land? Mara's pulse quickened. A railroad. That explained everything. Land that was worthless for cattle became priceless if a railroad ran through it. Thorne wasn't building an empire. He was positioning himself to sell to the railroad at an obscene profit, and Caleb's ranch sat right in the path. She set down the coffee tin and walked out before anyone noticed her. Her mind raced. This changed everything. Thorne wasn't just being cruel, he was being strategic. Drive Caleb off, buy the land cheap, sell it to the railroad for 10 times the price. Simple, brutal, effective. But knowing the plan didn't stop it, she needed proof. Something concrete. Something she could take to Caleb that would convince him this was bigger than a personal grudge. She found that proof an hour later, in the last place she expected. The land office sat at the edge of town, a small building with peeling paint and a clerk who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mara walked in, smiled sweetly, and asked to see the recent property transfers. The clerk barely looked up. Public record? Help yourself. She spent the next 2 hours poring over documents, tracing Thorne's purchases, mapping them out mentally. And there it was, a clear pattern. Every piece of land Thorne had bought in the last 5 years formed a line, a straight line running north to south through the valley, exactly where a railroad would need to go. She copied down the key information, tucked it into her jacket, and left. But as she stepped outside, she saw Reed Thorne leaning against a post across the street, watching her. Their eyes met. He smiled, tipped his hat. Mara didn't run. Running would confirm she'd found something worth hiding. Instead, she walked calmly to her horse, mounted up, and rode out of town at a steady pace. Only when she was clear of the buildings did she kick the horse into a gallop. Reed didn't follow, but she knew he would tell his uncle, and that meant time was running out. She made it back to the ranch just before sunset. Caleb was fixing fence in the east pasture, and she rode straight to him. "We need to talk," she said, breathless. He looked up from his work, saw her expression, and immediately set down the hammer. "What happened?" "Railroad. Thorne's positioning for a railroad." She dismounted, pulled out the papers. "Surveyors came through last month. There's a silver strike up north, and they need a way to transport the ore. Thorne's been buying up every piece of land along the projected route." Caleb took the papers, studied them. His face went hard. "My ranch. Right in the middle of it. If he can push you out, he owns the entire corridor, sells it to the railroad for a fortune." "Son of a bitch." Caleb crumpled the papers in his fist. "How sure are you?" "Sure enough. I checked the land office records. Every purchase lines up." She paused. "Reed saw me leaving. He knows I was looking. Damn it, Mara. I was careful. Not careful enough. He paced, thinking. They're going to escalate. If they know we're on to them, they'll move faster. Then we move faster, too. Mara grabbed his arm. We take this to the law. Show them what Thorne's doing. Poisoning wells, burning barns. That's illegal even out here. The sheriff's in Thorne's pocket. Has been for years. Then we go over his head. Federal marshal, circuit judge, someone. And who's going to believe us? A broke rancher and the town outcast against the richest man in the valley? Caleb pulled away, running his hands through his hair. We need more than suspicion, Mara. We need proof. Real proof. Something that can't be ignored. She knew he was right, but getting that proof meant getting close to Thorne, close enough to see what he was really doing. And that was dangerous. I have an idea, she said slowly, but you're not going to like it. Try me. Thorne's hosting a gathering next week, big social event. Everyone who's anyone will be there. She met his eyes, including people who might talk if they drink enough. You want to go to Thorne's party? I want us to go, together, play the part of a couple trying to make nice, maybe salvage the ranch through social connections. People will talk around us. Let things slip. Caleb stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Thorne will never believe it. He will if we sell it right. You're desperate. I'm practical. We're exploring options. It's not that far from the truth. It's insane. It's smart. She stepped closer. Look, I know it's risky, but we need to know what he's planning, and this is our best chance. Once that railroad deal goes through, it's over. He'll have won. Caleb was quiet for a long time, weighing it. Finally, he nodded. All right, but we do this my way. We go in, we listen, we get out. No confrontations, no heroics. Agreed. They shook on it, and Mara felt the weight of what they were about to do settle on her shoulders. This wasn't like treating cataracts or mixing medicine. This was stepping into the lion's den and hoping not to get eaten. That night, she performed the second treatment on Caleb's mother. The process was just as brutal as the first time, but the older woman bore it with grim determination. When it was done, when the burning finally stopped and Mara removed the bandages, the cloudiness was almost completely gone. I can see, Caleb's mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. I can see clearly. Caleb knelt beside her chair, and she cupped his face in her hands, studying every detail. You need a shave, and a haircut, and probably a month of sleep. He laughed. Actually, laughed. I'll work on it. And you? She turned to Mara. Come here, girl. Mara approached cautiously. Caleb's mother took her hand, held it tight. You gave me back the world, she said. I don't know how to repay that. You don't need to. Everyone needs to repay their debts. It's how the world works. She squeezed Mara's hand. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my blessing for whatever happens next. Mara blinked. I don't understand. Yes, you do. The older woman's eyes twinkled. You're smart. You'll figure it out. Caleb cleared his throat. Ma, don't start. I'm not starting anything, just stating facts. She released Mara's hand, settled back in her chair. Now, I'm exhausted, and I can finally see well enough to read. Where's that book I was working on before all this started? Caleb found it for her, and she opened it with reverence, running her fingers over the pages like they were made of gold. Mara watched, feeling something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Later, when his mother had gone to bed, Caleb walked Mara out to the barn. Thank you, he said, for everything. You already thanked me. I'm thanking you again. He leaned against the barn door, looking up at the stars. I was wrong about you. When you first showed up, I thought you were running some kind of con. Figured you were like everyone else, looking for an angle. And now? Now I think you're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Maybe both. Mara smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. It is one. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Why are you doing this? Not just the medicine, all of it. You could have walked away after treating Ma, but you didn't. She thought about lying, about giving him some easy answer that wouldn't expose too much, but she was tired of hiding. Because I know what it's like, she said quietly, to be alone, to have everyone write you off as worthless, to fight for every scrap of respect and still come up short. She paused. Your mother needed help, and nobody else was going to give it. So I did. And then I saw what Thorn was doing, and I got angry. Because men like him think they can take whatever they want, and the rest of us just have to accept it. You don't accept much, do you? Not if I can help it. Caleb nodded slowly. That party next week. We're really doing this? Unless you've got a better idea. I don't. He pushed off from the door. But if things go wrong, they won't. If they do, you run. Don't wait for me. Don't try to be a hero. Just run. Caleb, promise me. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't the kind of person who ran, but the look in his eyes stopped her. All right, she said. I promise. He seemed satisfied with that. Get some sleep. We've got a lot to prepare. He walked back to the cabin, and Mara stood alone in the darkness, listening to the wind and wondering if she'd just made a promise she couldn't keep. The next few days passed in a blur. Caleb worked on securing the ranch, setting traps around the perimeter, teaching his mother how to use the old rifle his father had left behind. Mara divided her time between helping him and preparing for the party, which required a level of social performance she wasn't used to. She didn't own anything fancy. Her clothes were practical, made for work, not for impressing wealthy ranchers. But Caleb's mother, her vision restored, took charge. We'll alter one of my old dresses, she said, pulling a trunk from the back of the closet. I was about your size when I was younger. The dress she produced was dark green, simple but elegant, with long sleeves and a high collar. Mara tried it on, feeling awkward in the unfamiliar fabric. It fits, Caleb's mother said, circling her with pins. Needs to be taken in at the waist, but otherwise it's perfect. I look ridiculous. You look like a lady. There's a difference. She made a few adjustments, then stepped back. There. Now, let's do something about your hair. My hair's fine. Your hair looks like you cut it with a knife, which you probably did. She grabbed a brush. Sit down, let me fix it. An hour later, Mara barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress fit properly now, cinched at the waist and flowing to her ankles. Her hair, usually tied back haphazardly, had been brushed and pinned into something resembling style. I still think this is a bad idea, she muttered. The party or the dress? Both, Caleb's mother laughed. You're doing fine, better than fine. Caleb won't know what hit him. As if summoned, Caleb walked in from outside, saw Mara, and stopped dead. What? Mara demanded. Nothing. You just... He cleared his throat. You clean up nice. Don't get used to it. Wasn't planning on it. But his eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary before he turned away. His mother caught Mara's eye and winked. Mara felt her face heat and busied herself with adjusting the dress. The day of the party arrived too quickly. They rode into town together, Caleb in his cleanest shirt and Mara in the borrowed dress, both of them tense and alert. Thorne's house sat on a hill overlooking Ridgewater, a sprawling structure that dwarfed every other building in town. Lights blazed from every window, and music drifted down from the open doors. Last chance to back out, Caleb said. Not a chance. They dismounted and walked up the steps together. A servant met them at the door, took their names, and ushered them inside. The house was full of people. Wealthy ranchers, businessmen, town officials, everyone dressed in their finest, drinking expensive whiskey and pretending they were more important than they were. Mara recognized a few faces from town, but most were strangers. And there, at the center of it all, was Garrett Thorne, smiling, charming, playing the gracious host like he was born to it. He saw them immediately. His smile widened. Caleb Vance, he said, crossing the room with a glass in hand. What a pleasant surprise. I didn't think you'd come. Figured I'd see what all the fuss was about, Caleb said evenly. And you brought a guest. Thorne's eyes slid to Mara. Miss Holloway, isn't it? I've heard so much about you. I'm sure you have, Mara said. All good things, I assure you. Word is you worked a miracle with Caleb's mother, restored her sight. His tone was pleasant, but his eyes were calculating. That's quite a talent. I do what I can. Modest, too. How refreshing. He gestured to the room. Please, enjoy yourselves. Eat, drink, mingle. We're all friends here. He moved away, but Mara could feel his attention like a weight. They were being watched, evaluated, and one wrong move would give them away. Spread out, Caleb murmured. Listen, meet back here in an hour. Mara nodded and drifted toward a group of women clustered near the refreshment table. They were gossiping, voices low, and she slipped in close enough to hear without being noticed. Did you hear about the railroad? Oh, yes. My husband says it's a done deal. They're just waiting for the final surveys. Garrett must be thrilled. All that land he bought is going to make him a fortune. He always was clever, knew which way the wind was blowing before anyone else. Mara filed that away and moved on. She circulated through the room, picking up fragments of conversation, piecing together the puzzle. The railroad was real. The deal was close to finalized, and Thorne had positioned himself to profit massively. But she still didn't have proof. Nothing concrete that would hold up in court. She was near the back of the room when she saw Reed. He was drunk, leaning against a wall and talking loudly to anyone who would listen. My uncle's a genius, he slurred. Absolute genius. Bought up all that worthless land, and now it's worth millions. Millions! How do you know about the railroad? Someone asked. Surveyor told him. Paid the man to share the route before it went public. Reed laughed. That's how you get ahead. You pay for information. Mara's heart hammered. That was it. Proof of bribery. Proof that Thorne had manipulated the system. She needed to get Reed to repeat it. Somewhere witnesses could hear. Somewhere it would matter. But before she could figure out how, someone grabbed her arm. She turned. Cutter stood there, his dead eyes locked on hers. Boss wants to see you, he said. Now. Mara's first instinct was to pull away, but Cutter's grip tightened. Not enough to hurt, but enough to make his point clear. She glanced around the room, looking for Caleb, but he was on the far side talking to a group of ranchers. Too far to help. Too far to even notice. Let go of my arm, she said quietly. Walk, Cutter replied. He steered her through the crowd, weaving between clusters of guests who were too drunk or too self-absorbed to pay attention. They went down a hallway lined with mounted animal heads and expensive paintings, toward a door at the end. Cutter knocked once, then pushed it open. Thorne's office was smaller than she expected, but every inch of it screamed money. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, shelves lined with books that probably hadn't been read, and behind the desk sat Garrett Thorne himself, pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. Miss Holloway, he said warmly, as if they were old friends. Please sit. Cutter released her arm and took up position by the door, blocking it. Mara sat, kept her hands folded in her lap. Her heart was hammering, but she forced her face to stay neutral. Thorne slid one of the glasses across the desk. Drink? No, thank you. Suit yourself. He settled back in his chair, studying her. You know, I've been curious about you. The whole town has, really. Ruth Holloway's granddaughter. The girl who disappeared into the woods after the old woman died. And now here you are, performing miracles. It's not a miracle. It's medicine. Semantics. He swirled his whiskey. The point is, you've done something remarkable. Caleb's mother can see again. That's worth celebrating. Then why am I here instead of out there celebrating? Thorne smiled. Because I wanted to talk to you privately. Woman to woman, so to speak. I'm listening. Caleb Vance is a stubborn man, proud, the kind who'd rather burn his own house down than admit he needs help. He paused. But you're not like that, are you? You're practical, sensible. You understand how the world really works. Mara said nothing. So here's what I'm proposing, Thorne continued. I'll make you an offer, a generous one. You convince Caleb to sell his ranch to me, and I'll pay you 10% of the purchase price. In cash. Enough to set yourself up anywhere you want. Buy land. Start fresh. Whatever you desire. You're trying to bribe me. I'm trying to help you. His tone remained pleasant, but something cold flickered in his eyes. You're wasting your talents out there in the woods, mixing potions for people who can't pay you. With that kind of money, you could open a real practice, hire assistants, make a name for yourself. And all I have to do is betray someone who's shown me nothing but decency. Decency doesn't pay bills, Miss Holloway. Trust me, I know. He leaned forward. Caleb's going to lose that ranch one way or another. It's inevitable. The only question is whether you profit from it or go down with him. Mara met his eyes, saw the calculation there, the absolute certainty that everyone had a price. No, she said. Thorne blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not interested in your money, and I'm not going to convince Caleb to do anything. She stood. Are we done here? For a moment, Thorne's mask slipped. The charming host disappeared, replaced by something harder. Meaner. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "Probably. I've made plenty of them." She turned toward the door. "But at least I can sleep at night." Cutter didn't move. She looked at him, then back at Thorne. "Am I free to go, or are we doing this the ugly way?" Thorne waved his hand. "Let her go." Cutter stepped aside. Mara walked out, forcing herself not to run, not to show fear. But her hands were shaking by the time she reached the main room. She found Caleb near the fireplace. He took one look at her face and tensed. "What happened?" "Not here. Outside." They slipped out onto the veranda away from the crowd. The night air was cold, cutting through the thin fabric of Mara's dress. "Thorne tried to bribe me," she said, keeping her voice low. "Wanted me to convince you to sell. Offered me 10%. Caleb's jaw tightened. "That son of a... It doesn't matter." I said no. She glanced back at the house. "But we need to be careful. He knows we're onto him. And Reed's been running his mouth about bribing the surveyor. If we can get him to repeat that in front of the right people, forget it, we're leaving." "What? No, we're this close." "I don't care." Caleb grabbed her arm, gentler than Cutter had, but just as insistent. "This was a bad idea. I should never have let you talk me into it." "Caleb, listen to me." Reed said Thorne paid the surveyor to share the railroad route before it went public. That's bribery. That's illegal. If we can get him to say it again, somewhere official, and how do you plan to do that? Walk him down to the sheriff's office while he's drunk and hope he confesses? Caleb shook his head. It won't work. Thorne owns the sheriff, owns half the town. Even if Reed admits it, nothing will happen. Mara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. The frustration burned in her chest like acid. So what, we just give up? Let him win? No, we find another way. Caleb looked back at the house. But not tonight. Tonight we leave before someone gets hurt. Before Mara could respond, the door opened. Reed stumbled out, still drunk, a bottle in one hand. He saw them and grinned. Well, well, the happy couple. He took a swig. Enjoying the party? We were just leaving, Caleb said flatly. Oh, don't go. Night's just getting started. Reed swayed slightly. Uncle Garrett wanted me to make sure you felt welcome. Said you were important guests. We're fine. You know what I think? Reed leaned against the railing. I think you two are up to something. Sneaking around, asking questions. Thought you were clever, didn't you? Mara felt Caleb tense beside her. We're not sneaking around. Sure you are. I saw you, Reed pointed at Mara with the bottle. In the land office, going through records. And now you show up here dressed all fancy, pretending to play nice. He laughed. You think we're stupid? I think you're drunk, Caleb said. Go sleep it off. Or what? You gonna make me? Reed pushed off from the railing, squaring up. You're nothing, Vance, a broke rancher with a dying spread. My uncle's gonna own your land in a month, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Walk away, Reed. Make me. It happened fast. Reed swung the bottle. Caleb ducked, grabbed Reed's arm, and twisted. The bottle shattered on the wooden deck. Reed yelped, tried to pull free, and Caleb shoved him back against the railing. I said, walk away, Caleb growled. Reed's eyes went wide. Then he started laughing. You just assaulted me. In front of witnesses. Uncle Garrett's going to have you arrested. No witnesses out here but us. You think that matters? I'll tell everyone. Say you attacked me for no reason. Reed's grin was ugly. You just gave us exactly what we needed. Caleb released him, stepped back. Mara could see the realization hitting him. Reed was right. It didn't matter what actually happened. It mattered what Thorne could make people believe. Let's go, Mara said quietly. They left Reed laughing on the veranda and walked quickly to their horses. Behind them, the party continued, oblivious. But Mara knew the damage was done. They rode in silence until they were clear of town. Then Caleb pulled up, breathing hard. I screwed up, he said. He provoked you. Doesn't matter. I played right into their hands. He looked at her. You were right. We should have stayed focused, should have ignored him. We both made mistakes tonight. Mara's mind was racing. But maybe we can still use this. Reed admitted Thorne's going to own your land. That's intent. If we can prove he's been sabotaging you, How? We've got no evidence, no witnesses willing to talk, nothing that would hold up. Mara thought about it. There had to be something, some angle they hadn't considered. Then it hit her. The surveyor, she said. Reed said Thorne bribed him. If we can find that surveyor, get him to testify. Why would he? He took the bribe. Admitting it would destroy his career. Unless we offer him something better, protection, a way out. She looked at Caleb. Do you know who the surveyor is? No, but I know someone who might. They rode hard back to the ranch. Caleb's mother was still awake, sitting by the fire with her book. She looked up when they came in, saw their faces, and set the book aside. That bad? Worse, Caleb said. Ma, you remember when the surveyors came through, few months back? I remember. Young fellow, polite, had breakfast here before heading up into the hills. You get his name? She thought for a moment. Martin, Thomas Martin, said he was from back east, Philadelphia, I think. Caleb and Mara exchanged looks. Where would he be now? Mara asked. Survey teams usually camp near the work site, Caleb's mother said. If they're still mapping the northern range, they'd be up near Silver Creek. That's 2 days' ride, Caleb said. Then we leave at first light. Mara was already planning. We find this Martin, we convince him to talk, and we bring his testimony back to someone who can actually do something about it. Who? The sheriff won't listen. The judge is Thorne's friend. Then we go to the federal marshal, or we take it to the newspapers. Make enough noise that Thorne can't bury it. She paused. Unless you've got a better idea. Caleb didn't, and they both knew it. His mother stood, moved to the cabinet, and pulled out a leather pouch. She handed it to Caleb. What's this? Emergency money. Your father kept it hidden for when things got bad. She pressed it into his hands. They're bad now. Use it. Caleb opened the pouch. Inside was more cash than Mara had seen in months. Maybe $100. Ma, this is not enough, but it's what we have. Take it. Bribe this surveyor if you need to, pay for protection, whatever it takes. She looked at both of them. You're fighting for our lives here. Don't lose because you were too proud to spend money. Caleb kissed her forehead. We'll be back in 4 days. Maybe 5. I'll be here. Now go get some sleep. You've got a long ride ahead. They did try to sleep, but Mara spent most of the night staring at the barn ceiling, running through scenarios. What if Martin wouldn't talk? What if Thorne found out they were looking for him? What if they were already too late? Dawn came gray and cold. They packed light, taking only what they'd need for the trail. Food, water, blankets. Caleb brought his rifle. Mara brought her knife and a satchel of medical supplies, just in case. His mother stood on the porch as they mounted up. Be careful, she said. Always, Caleb lied. They rode north, following the valley trail until it narrowed into a steep mountain path. The terrain was rough here, all rocks and scrub pine, and the horses picked their way carefully through the switchbacks. By midday, they'd climbed high enough that Ridgewater was just a smudge in the distance below. How well do you know this area? Mara asked. Well enough. Used to hunt up here with my father. Caleb pointed toward a distant ridge. Silver Creek's on the other side of that. If the survey team's still there, we should find them by tomorrow afternoon. And if they're not, then we track them. Survey teams leave trails, equipment, markers. He glanced at her. You having second thoughts? No, you? About 100 of them. He smiled grimly. But I'm still riding. They made camp that night in a sheltered hollow, building a small fire for warmth but keeping it low to avoid attention. Mara heated beans in a pan while Caleb checked the horses. You ever think about leaving? He asked, settling down across from her. Just packing up and starting over somewhere else? Every day. But then I ask myself where I'd go, and I realize I don't know anywhere but here. She stirred the beans. What about you? Same. This valley's all I've ever known. My father's buried here. My mother's spent her whole life here. Leaving would feel like giving up on them. Even if staying means losing everything. Especially then. He poked at the fire with a stick. My father used to say that land isn't just dirt and grass. It's memory. It's work. It's every drop of sweat and blood you put into it. Walking away from that is like erasing yourself. Mara understood that. Her grandmother's cabin held the same weight. Every plant in the garden, every shelf of dried herbs, every scar on the wooden table from years of preparation. Leaving it would mean leaving part of herself behind. "We're going to win this," she said. "We're going to find Martin, and he's going to tell the truth, and Thorne's going to lose." "You sound pretty sure." "I have to be. Otherwise, what's the point?" She handed him a plate of beans. "Eat. We need our strength." They ate in silence, the fire crackling between them. Above, stars filled the sky so densely they looked like spilled salt. Out here, away from town, the world felt bigger, quieter. And for a moment, Mara could almost pretend they were just two people on a camping trip, not two people running out of time. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said after a while. "Sure." "Why didn't you take Thorne's offer? 10% of that land sale would set you up for life." Mara considered lying, giving him some noble answer about principles and doing the right thing, but she was tired of pretending. "Because I'm tired of men like Thorne getting everything they want," she said. "My whole life, I've watched people like him take and take and take, and the rest of us just accept it. We tell ourselves there's no point fighting because they're too powerful, too connected, too rich. But that's exactly what they want us to think." She looked at him. "Your mother deserved to see. You deserve to keep your ranch. And I deserve to live in a world where helping people doesn't make me an outsider." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're not an outsider. Not to me." "What am I then?" "Someone worth knowing." He said it simply, honestly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Mara felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying at the same time. "Get some sleep," she said, looking away. "I'll take first watch." I mean it, sleep." He didn't argue, just rolled himself in a blanket near the fire and closed his eyes. Mara sat with her back against a tree, knife in her lap, watching the darkness beyond their small circle of light. She thought about what Caleb had said, about being someone worth knowing. Nobody had ever said that to her before. Not like that. Not like it mattered, and maybe that's what scared her most. Because if this went wrong, if Thorne won and they lost everything, it wouldn't just be land or money or pride. It would be this. Whatever fragile thing was building between them, and she wasn't sure she could survive losing that. Morning came with frost on the ground and mist hanging in the valleys. They broke camp quickly, ate cold biscuits while riding, and pushed hard toward Silver Creek. The terrain grew rougher as they climbed, all loose scree and narrow ledges that made the horses nervous. Around noon, they heard voices. Caleb held up a hand and they both stopped. The voices came from somewhere ahead, muffled by distance and trees. They dismounted, tied the horses, and moved forward on foot. Through the pines, they saw the survey camp. 3 tents, a wagon loaded with equipment, and 4 men gathered around a fire, eating lunch. "Which one's Martin?" Mara whispered. Caleb scanned the group. "Don't know. Never saw him." "Then we ask." Before he could stop her, Mara walked into the clearing. The men looked up, surprised. One of them, a heavy-set fellow with a beard, stood quickly. "Who are you?" "My name's Mara Holloway. I'm looking for Thomas Martin." The bearded man's eyes narrowed. "What for?" "That's between me and him." A younger man near the fire stood. He was thin, nervous-looking, with ink-stained fingers. "I'm Martin. What do you want?" Mara glanced back at Caleb, who'd emerged from the trees. The other surveyors tensed, hands moving toward tools that could double as weapons. "We just want to talk," Caleb said, showing his empty hands. "We're not here to cause trouble." "Then state your business and leave," the bearded man said. Mara looked at Martin. "You surveyed the railroad route through Ridgewater Valley. Is that correct?" Martin's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. And you shared that route with Garrett Thorne before it was made public. He paid you for the information." "That's a lie." "Is it?" Mara stepped closer. "Because we have witnesses who say otherwise. And if we bring this to the federal authorities, they're going to investigate. And when they do, they're going to find proof of the bribe. Bank records, correspondence, something." Martin looked like he might be sick. The bearded man moved protectively in front of him. "You need to leave," he said. Now. Not until Martin tells us the truth, Caleb said. We don't owe you anything. Maybe not. But you owe the people of Ridgewater. Mara's voice hardened. Thorne's been using that information to destroy families, to steal land, to ruin lives, and you helped him do it. Martin pushed past the bearded man. I didn't know what he was going to do with it. He just said he wanted to prepare, to make smart investments. And you believed him? I needed the money. Martin's voice cracked. My wife's sick. The doctors are expensive. He offered me $500 for a piece of paper. I didn't think it would hurt anyone. Well, it did, Caleb said. And it's still hurting people. So now you have a choice. You can come back to Ridgewater with us and tell the authorities what you told Thorne. Or you can stay here and let an innocent man lose everything he has. If I testify, I'll lose my job. Maybe worse. And if you don't, you'll have to live with knowing you helped destroy people's lives. Mara softened her tone. Look, I understand. You were trying to help your wife. That's not wrong, but covering it up now is. Help us make this right. Martin looked at his fellow surveyors, at the camp, at the mountains surrounding them. Mara could see him calculating, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll testify, but I want protection. If Thorne finds out before I can get somewhere safe, we'll make sure you're protected, Caleb said. You have my word. Your word doesn't mean much if you're dead. Then we'll move fast. Mara pulled out the leather pouch of money. Take this. Get your wife somewhere safe, then meet us in Ridgewater in 3 days. We'll have a federal marshal waiting. Martin took the money, stared at it. This is a lot. It's all we have. Use it. The bearded man put a hand on Martin's shoulder. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Martin looked at Mara. 3 days. That's all you get. If there's no marshal, I'm gone. There will be. They shook on it, and Mara felt the first real surge of hope she'd had in days. They had their witness. Now they just needed to keep him alive long enough to use him. As they rode back down the mountain, Caleb said, You know Thorne's going to come after us the moment he finds out about this. I know. And we just gave away all our money. I know that too. So what's the plan? Mara smiled grimly. We ride hard. We get to the nearest town with a telegraph. We contact the federal marshal's office. And then we pray we're fast enough. That's not much of a plan. It's what we've got. They pushed the horses harder than they should have, racing against time and Thorne's reach. By sunset, they'd made it back to the valley trail. By midnight, they were approaching a small town called Copper Springs, nothing more than a handful of buildings clustered around a mining operation. The telegraph office was closed, but Caleb pounded on the door until the operator stumbled out, half asleep and irritated. What the hell do you want? Need to send an urgent message, Caleb said. Federal Marshal's office. Can you do that? The operator rubbed his eyes. Cost you double, night rate. I don't care what it costs. Send it. They composed the message together, keeping it brief. Corruption. Bribery. Witness ready to testify. Request immediate assistance. Mara signed it with both their names, and the operator tapped it out on the machine, the clicks echoing in the small office. Response could take hours, the operator said. Maybe days if they're busy. We'll wait. They sat outside the office as dawn broke, exhausted and wired at the same time. Around them, the mining town started to wake up, workers heading to the shafts, shopkeepers opening their doors. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, the operator emerged with a slip of paper. Reply came through, he said. Caleb snatched it, read it aloud. Marshal Winston departing immediately. Arrive Ridgewater 3 days. Stand by. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. We need to get back, she said. Make sure Martin shows up. Make sure your mother's safe. They mounted up one more time, bodies screaming in protest, and started the ride home. But as they crested the final ridge overlooking Ridgewater Valley, Mara saw smoke. Black. Thick. Rising from exactly where the Vance Ranch should be. Caleb saw it too. His face went white. Ma, he whispered. Then he kicked his horse into a gallop, racing toward the smoke, and Mara followed, her heart in her throat and her mind screaming that they were already too late. The horses were half dead by the time they reached the ranch, foam flecking their mouths, sides heaving like bellows. Caleb threw himself off before his mount even stopped, boots hitting the ground hard enough to send up dust. He ran toward the cabin, his legs burning from 3 days of riding, lungs screaming for air he didn't have time to take. The smoke was coming from the barn. What was left of it, anyway? The structure had collapsed in on itself, timbers crossed like broken bones, sending up that thick black column they'd seen from miles away. Embers still glowed in the wreckage, pulsing like dying stars. But the cabin was still standing. Caleb hit the door so hard it slammed against the inside wall. "Ma!" Silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. "Ma!" His voice cracked raw. He tore through the cabin, checking every corner. The bedroom door hung off its hinges. Her bed was unmade, blankets trailing onto the floor. The kitchen table was overturned, one leg snapped clean off. Glass from a broken lamp glittered across the floorboards like scattered diamonds. Mara was right behind him, scanning the room with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to read violence. She saw the overturned furniture, the scuff marks on the wood, the way the door to the bedroom had been forced open from the outside. "Caleb," she said quietly. He was in the loft now, throwing aside blankets, looking under the bed frame, anywhere a person could hide. "She's not here. She's not here." "Caleb, come down." "Maybe she ran. Maybe she got out before—" "Caleb," Mara's voice cut through his panic. "Come down and look at this." He climbed down the ladder, hands shaking so badly he nearly lost his grip. Mara was outside now, crouched near the porch. She pointed at the ground. Boot prints. Deep ones pressed into the dirt. At least 3 different sets, maybe 4. They'd come from the south, circled the cabin in what looked like a coordinated approach, then headed back toward town in a tight group. And mixed in with them, smaller prints. Barefoot. Being dragged. The prints were deeper where they started, lighter as they moved away. Someone struggling, someone being forced. Caleb's vision went red at the edges. "Thorn! Looks like it." "He took her." The words came out flat, emotionless, but Mara could see the rage building behind his eyes. The kind of rage that made men do stupid, fatal things. He figured out we went after Martin. This is payback. Mara stood, brushed dirt from her hands. Her mind was already racing through scenarios, calculating odds, looking for angles. They had maybe 3 days before Marshal Winston arrived. 3 days to find Caleb's mother, keep Thomas Martin alive long enough to testify, and somehow stay alive themselves while going up against the most powerful man in the valley. The odds were terrible. But terrible odds were better than no odds at all. "We go to town," she said. "Find out where he's keeping her." "And then what?" Caleb was pacing now, the rifle forgotten near the door. "Storm his house? They'll kill us both." "Not if we're smart about it." Mara caught his arm, made him look at her. "Listen to me. If we go in shooting, your mother dies. You know that. Thorne's expecting us to do something reckless. That's what he wants. Gives him an excuse to kill all of us and claim self-defense." Caleb jerked his arm away. "So what? We just leave her there?" "No, we get her out, but we do it the right way." She was thinking fast now, pulling together the threads of a plan that was probably insane, but might just work. "There's another option. We use me as bait." "Absolutely not." "Listen, I said no, Mara. Thorne wanted me to convince you to sell. I refused. But what if I changed my mind? What if I showed up at his door saying I'd reconsidered, that I wanted to make a deal?" Caleb stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "He won't believe it. He's not stupid." "He doesn't have to believe it completely. He just has to believe it enough to let me in the door." Mara moved closer, lowering her voice. "Men like Thorne think everyone's for sale. They can't imagine someone actually meaning no when they say it. Their whole worldview is built on the idea that everything and everyone has a price. And you're going to walk in there and what? Convince him you found yours? I tell him I've seen what he can do. I'm scared. I want out. I'll deliver you and the deed to your ranch if he releases your mother." She met his eyes. He'll go for it, because in his mind, he's already won. This is just mop-up work. And what happens when he realizes you're lying? I won't be there long enough for him to realize anything. I get in, I find out where your mother is being held, I get out. Then we make a real plan based on actual information instead of guesses. Caleb shook his head. It's too dangerous. Everything's dangerous. Sitting here doing nothing is dangerous. Riding into town blind is dangerous. At least this way, we get intelligence first. Mara, do you have a better idea? He didn't, and they both knew it. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of the barn's remaining timbers settling with a groan. Finally, Caleb picked up his rifle. 1 hour. You've got 1 hour from the time you walk into that house. If you're not out by then, I'm coming in. Make it 2 hours. Thorn likes to talk. Likes to think he's the smartest person in the room. I'll have to play to that. Let him monologue. A fine. 2 hours. He checked the rifle's ammunition, his hand steadier now that he had something concrete to do. But if anything goes wrong, it won't. If it does, you run. Don't wait for me. Don't try to be a hero. Just run. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't the kind of person who ran, that she'd face down worse than Garrett Thorne and lived to tell about it. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't about her pride. This was about him needing to know that if everything went to hell, at least she'd survive it. All right, she said. I promise. He seemed satisfied with that, though they both probably knew it was a promise she might not be able to keep. They gathered what they needed. Caleb strapped on his gun belt, made sure he had extra ammunition. Mara changed into the green dress from the party, the one that made her look respectable instead of dangerous. She pinned her hair back, washed the trail dust from her face. When she looked in the small mirror by the door, she barely recognized herself. She looked like someone who'd go begging to a man like Thorne, someone beaten down, someone who'd given up. Perfect. They rode into Ridgewater as the sun climbed higher, painting the dusty streets in harsh afternoon light. The town felt different now, menacing. Like every window held watching eyes, every shadow concealed a threat. Mara's skin crawled with the awareness of being observed, judged, reported on. The warehouse fire from last night, or was it the night before? Time had become slippery, had left a black scar on the north end of town. People were still cleaning up, hauling away charred timber, salvaging what they could. She caught fragments of conversation as they passed. Heard it was arson. Thorne's offering a reward for information. Shame about all that grain. That was winter stores for half the valley. Good. Let them talk. Let Thorne think the fire was just bad luck or a rival. Anything except the truth. They split up at the edge of town. Caleb would wait at the saloon, visible but not threatening. Just another rancher drowning his troubles in cheap whiskey. Mara would go to Thorne's house alone. 2 hours, Caleb said again. 2 hours. Mara adjusted the dress, made sure she looked appropriately desperate. And Caleb? If I'm not out and you hear gunshots, don't come running. Get to Copper Springs. Tell the marshal everything. That's not happening. Promise me. No. She almost smiled. Stubborn man. Fine. Then try not to get yourself killed. Same to you. Mara rode to Thorne's house, that sprawling monument to wealth and corruption perched on its hill like a vulture watching the town below. The servant who'd been at the door during the party met her again. If he recognized her, he didn't show it. I need to see Mr. Thorne, Mara said, keeping her voice respectful but strained, like someone at the end of their rope. Tell him Mara Holloway is here to discuss his offer. The servant's eyebrows rose fractionally. 1 moment. He disappeared inside. Mara waited, counting her heartbeats, feeling sweat gather at the small of her back despite the cool air. This was the moment. Either Thorne would buy the act or he wouldn't. Either way, she was about to find out. The servant returned. Mr. Thorne will see you in his study. Mara followed him through the house. The same hallway lined with mounted animal heads. The same expensive paintings that probably cost more than most people in Ridgewater made in a year. The same oppressive sense of wealth used as a weapon. Thorne was waiting by the window when she entered, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He turned when the door closed, and his smile was everything she'd expected, triumphant, satisfied, the smile of a man who'd won and knew it. Miss Holloway, he said warmly, as if they were old friends meeting for tea. I had a feeling you'd see reason. Mara didn't sit, didn't accept the drink he gestured toward, just stood there, letting him see the exhaustion in her face, the defeat in her shoulders. Where is she? Who? He was playing with her, enjoying it. Caleb's mother. Don't play games with me, I know you have her. Thorne's smile widened. Safe, for now. Whether she stays that way depends entirely on you and young Mr. Vance. Mara forced herself to stay calm, to not react to the casual cruelty in his tone. You want his ranch? I can deliver it. But I need proof she's alive and unharmed. You're not really in a position to make demands, Miss Holloway. Neither are you. She met his eyes, letting a little steel show through the exhaustion. Kill her and Caleb will never sell. He'll burn that place to the ground himself before he lets you have it. But if she's safe, if I can convince him she'll be released unharmed once the deed is signed, he might listen. He's tired, beaten. One more push and he'll break. It was a delicate balance. She needed to seem desperate enough to betray Caleb, but not so desperate that Thorne would wonder why she'd held out this long. She needed to give him a reason to believe her that aligned with his worldview. Thorne studied her, swirling the whiskey in his glass, calculating. What do you want in return? Here it was, the crucial moment. The money you offered, 10% of the sale price, plus safe passage out of this valley. I don't want to be anywhere near here when this is over. Smart girl. He moved to his desk, pulled out a sheet of paper, legal documents, a deed transfer. Here's what's going to happen. You go back to Vance. You tell him his mother will die unless he signs this deed over to me by sunset tomorrow. Once I have the deed, verified and legal, she goes free. You get your money. Everyone walks away. Mara took the paper, her hands trembling just enough to look genuine. The deed was real. Thorne had already filled in his own name as the buyer. All it needed was Caleb's signature and a witness. How do I know you'll keep your word? She asked. You don't. But it's the only option you have. He held out a pen. Unless you'd prefer I send you down to the cellar to join the old woman, I'm sure she'd appreciate the company before she dies. The threat was delivered casually, like he was discussing the weather. Mara felt cold rage settle in her gut, but she kept it off her face. I want to see her first, she said. Proof of life. Otherwise Caleb won't believe me when I tell him she's still alive. Thorne considered this, taking a long sip of whiskey. All right, but you get 5 minutes. And if you try anything stupid, Cutter will put a bullet in both of you. Understood? Understood. Thorne moved to the door, opened it. Cutter! The enforcer appeared so quickly he must have been waiting right outside. His dead eyes fixed on Mara, and she felt her skin crawl. Take her to see the old woman, Thorne said. 5 minutes, then bring her back up. Cutter nodded, grabbed Mara's arm in a grip that was just shy of painful. Move. He led her through the house, down a narrow staircase she hadn't seen during the party. The walls were bare stone here, cold and damp. They descended into what must have been the original foundation of the house, a cellar that had been converted into storage. And at the far end, behind a heavy wooden door with a new lock, was Caleb's mother. Cutter unlocked the door, shoved it open. 5 minutes. The cellar room was small, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, with a dirt floor and stone walls that wept moisture. A single lantern provided light. And there, sitting on a rough wooden cot with her hands bound in front of her, was the woman who'd raised Caleb Vance. She looked up when the door opened. Her eyes, those eyes Mara had worked so hard to heal, took in Mara's face, the green dress, the careful arrangement of defeat, and for just a moment something flickered in her expression. Recognition. Understanding. Knew you'd come, she said quietly. Mara crossed to her, knelt beside the cot. Cutter stayed in the doorway watching. She had to be careful, couldn't say anything that would give away the plan, but she needed to assess the situation, find out what they were dealing with. Are you hurt? Mara asked, running her hands over the older woman's arms, checking for injuries the way she would with any patient. Bruised, angry, but alive. She glanced at Cutter with pure contempt. Your employer is a coward. Knew he couldn't beat my son in a fair fight, so he took a woman hostage. Shut up, Cutter said flatly. Mara found bruises on her wrists where the ropes had been tied too tight. More bruising on her shins, probably from being dragged. But nothing broken. No serious injuries. Her eyes were clear, focused. She was scared, but holding it together. Caleb's going to get you out, Mara whispered, low enough that hopefully Cutter wouldn't catch it. Hold on. Don't let him do something stupid for my sake. The older woman's voice was just as quiet. I'm not worth dying for. Yes, you are, and he knows it. Mara squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, don't give up. We're getting you out of here. Time's up, Cutter said. Mara was pulled away before she could say anything else. She looked back once and saw Caleb's mother watching her with those clear, healed eyes. The eyes Mara had given back to her. If nothing else came of this whole mess, at least that woman could see. At least she'd have that much when the end came, whatever form it took. Cutter led her back upstairs, his grip bruising. Thorne was waiting in his study, pouring himself another drink. "Satisfied?" he asked. "For now." Mara folded the deed, tucked it into her pocket. "I'll talk to Caleb, but I need more time. Sunset tomorrow isn't enough. He'll suspect something. Then convince him not to." Thorne settled into his chair. "You've got until sunset tomorrow, not a minute more. If he hasn't signed by then, the old woman dies. And I'll make sure everyone in town knows it was your fault for not delivering." The threat was clear. Mara nodded, playing the part of the cowed conspirator. "I'll deliver. Just make sure you keep your end of the bargain." "I always do. When people hold up theirs." He waved his hand dismissively. "Now get out. You've got work to do." Mara left, walking slowly down the front steps, every nerve screaming at her to run. But she forced herself to maintain the act, beaten, defeated, someone who'd sold out for money and safety. She mounted her horse and rode toward the saloon, her mind racing. She'd gotten what she needed. Location, guard situation, proof that Caleb's mother was alive. Now they just had to figure out how to get her out before Thorne's deadline. Caleb was waiting in a corner of the saloon, nursing a whiskey he hadn't touched. He looked up when Mara walked in, and the relief on his face was quickly replaced by tension when he saw her expression. She slid into the seat across from him. She's alive. In a cellar under his house. Bruised, but okay. "How many guards?" "I saw Cutter. Probably at least 2 more. The house has multiple entrances, but I only saw one that leads to the cellar." She pulled out the deed. "Thorne wants you to sign this by sunset tomorrow. Says once he has the deed, he'll release her." Caleb took the paper, stared at it like it was a snake. "He's lying." "I know." "He'll take the deed and kill her anyway. Can't leave witnesses." His jaw was tight. "So we don't give him the chance. We get her out tonight." "How? The place is guarded. We don't have enough people, enough guns." Mara stopped, started again. "We need a different approach. Something that doesn't involve a frontal assault." "Like what?" She thought about it, about Thorne's weaknesses, his assets, what he valued most. And then it clicked. "A distraction," she said. "Something big enough that he has to respond. Something that pulls his guards away from the house." "You're talking about the fire again." "No. The fire last night was to save your mother from being taken. This needs to be bigger, more urgent." She leaned forward. "What's Thorne's biggest remaining asset, after losing the warehouse?" Caleb thought. "His cattle. He's got about 200 head in the south pasture, prime stock, worth a fortune. And if something happened to them? If they got loose? Or worse? He'd have to respond. Would pull every man he has to deal with it." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "You want to stampede his herd. I want to create chaos. Confusion. A situation where Thorne can't afford to have guards sitting around watching one old woman because he needs every available man dealing with a crisis." She pulled out a scrap of paper, started sketching. "Here's how we do it. You create the stampede. I go in and get your mother. We meet at the north end of town and ride for Copper Springs before anyone realizes what happened. What about Martin? He's supposed to meet us there. If he shows, we're golden. If he doesn't, we've still got your mother safe and we can figure out the rest later." Caleb studied the rough map she'd drawn. "When?" "Tonight, after dark. Thorne's expecting us to spend tomorrow convincing you to sign. He won't be ready for us to move tonight." "That's a lot of assumptions." "You have a better plan?" He didn't, and the clock was ticking. Every hour they waited was another hour Thorne had to prepare, to fortify, to potentially move Caleb's mother somewhere they couldn't find her. "All right," Caleb said, "we do it your way. But if this goes wrong, it won't. If it does, we both run. Together. No heroics, no last stands. We get out, and we live to fight another day." Mara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Dying stupidly wouldn't help anyone. Agreed. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. Caleb scouted the south pasture where Thorne kept his cattle, looking for the best approach. Mara went back to her cabin to gather supplies. Oil for fire, though she hoped not to need it. Rope, knives, medical supplies in case things went very wrong. As the sun started to set, painting the valley in shades of blood and gold, they met at a predetermined spot north of town. Both were tense, running on adrenaline and fear, and the kind of desperate hope that made people do impossible things. "You ready?" Caleb asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He almost smiled. "That's my girl." They separated. Caleb headed south toward the cattle. Mara circled around to approach Thorne's house from the back, where the servant quarters were and security was lighter. She waited in the shadow of a storage shed, watching the house. Lights burned in the windows. She could see shapes moving inside, guards making rounds. Thorne probably in his study, drinking and congratulating himself on his inevitable victory. Time crawled. Every minute felt like an hour. Mara counted her heartbeats, controlled her breathing, and waited for Caleb's signal. It came just after full dark. A distant shout. Then more shouts. The sound of cattle bellowing, hooves thundering. Caleb had started the stampede. Inside the house, lights started moving faster. Men running. Someone barked orders. The back door flew open and 3 guards came pouring out, heading toward the commotion. Mara moved. She crossed the open ground to the house in seconds, slipped in through the door the guards had left open. The kitchen was empty. She could hear voices from the front of the house. Thorne shouting something about idiots and incompetence. She found the stairs to the cellar, started down. The door at the bottom was locked. She pulled out the lock picks she'd brought. Thin pieces of wire her grandmother had taught her to use on medicine cabinets when people couldn't afford to pay and their sick children needed treatment anyway. The lock was new but simple. It gave with a quiet click. Caleb's mother looked up when the door opened. Her eyes went wide. "Mara? No time. Can you walk?" "I can run if you need me to." She stood, hands still bound. Mara cut the ropes with her knife. They made it halfway up the stairs before they heard footsteps above. Heavy. Multiple sets. Mara pushed Caleb's mother back down. "Hide. There's nowhere to—" "Just get behind the door. Don't come out unless I call for you." The older woman obeyed. Mara continued up the stairs, trying to look casual, trying to think of a story that would explain her presence. The door at the top opened. Reed stood there, swaying slightly. Drunk again. Of course he was. He saw Mara and his eyes narrowed. "The hell are you doing here?" "Thorne sent me to check on the prisoner, make sure she's secure with all the chaos outside." "Bullshit. Nobody told me that." He put his hand on his gun. "I think you're trying to spring her." "Think what you want. I'm following orders." Mara started to push past him. Reed grabbed her arm. "You're not going anywhere." "Let go." "Make me." It happened fast. Reed's hand going for his gun. Mara's knee coming up hard into his groin. He doubled over with a strangled gasp, and she shoved him backward. He stumbled, fell, cracked his head on the doorframe. He went down hard and didn't get up. Mara stood over him, breathing hard, her hands shaking. She'd just assaulted Garrett Thorne's nephew. Again. This was becoming a habit. "Is he dead?" Caleb's mother had emerged from the cellar. Mara checked his pulse. "No, just unconscious, but we need to move. Now." They ran through the house, sticking to the servants' passages, avoiding the main rooms. Behind them, Mara could hear more shouting. The stampede was still going. Caleb was doing his job. Now she needed to do hers. They made it to the back door, into the night. The town was chaos. Cattle running through the streets, men chasing them, trying to herd them, trying to contain the damage. In the confusion, 2 women slipping through the shadows went completely unnoticed. Mara had hidden horses north of town. They mounted up, and she led Caleb's mother on a winding path through the outskirts, avoiding the main roads. Behind them, Ridgewater glowed with lamplight and panic. They were almost clear when they heard a horse behind them, coming fast. Mara's hand went to her knife, but it was Caleb, riding hard, his horse lathered with sweat. "Go!" he shouted. "They figured it out. Thorne's sending men after us." They rode, hard and fast through the darkness, trusting the horses to find their footing, praying they wouldn't hit a gopher hole or loose stone. Behind them, Mara could hear pursuit. Couldn't tell how many. More than 2. Less than 10. Enough to be a serious problem. "Split up," Caleb called. Mara, take Ma to Copper Springs. I'll lead them off. No, both women shouted simultaneously. Not negotiable. They want me. The ranch. If I run one direction and you run another, they'll follow me. He was already veering east. Go! Mara wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. She grabbed the reins of Caleb's mother's horse and kicked her own into a gallop, heading north. Behind them, she heard shouts. Gunfire. The sounds of pursuit splitting. Most of the riders went after Caleb, but at least two followed them. They rode through the night, pushing the horses to their limits. Caleb's mother clung to her saddle, moving with the horse despite not having ridden in years. The woman was tougher than she looked. The two riders behind them were gaining. Mara could hear them getting closer, calling for them to stop, threats and promises mixing together into noise. She saw a narrow trail splitting off from the main path, a deer track, barely wide enough for a horse. She took it without thinking, praying it led somewhere useful and not to a dead end. The trail climbed steeply, winding through pine trees and over loose rock. The horses slowed, picking their way carefully. Behind them, their pursuers had to slow too. They crested a ridge and Mara saw it. The spring. The same spring where she and Caleb had collected water when the well was poisoned. The terrain here was treacherous. Steep drop-offs, loose scree. Easy to defend if you knew the ground. She pulled up, helped Caleb's mother dismount. Stay here, behind these rocks. What are you doing? Making sure they don't follow us any further. She pulled the rifle from her saddle, checked it. 6 rounds. Enough. The two riders appeared on the trail below. She recognized one of them. One of Thorne's regular hired men. The other was a stranger. That's far enough, Mara called down. They stopped, looked up, saw her silhouetted against the stars with a rifle aimed in their direction. You don't want to do this, Miss Holloway, the one she recognized said. Pretty sure I do. Thorne's offering good money for you and the old woman, dead or alive. You really want to make this a shooting situation? I really want you to turn around and ride back to town. Tell Thorne you lost us in the dark. Can't do that. Then I guess we're at an impasse. She aimed carefully at a spot just above his head, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the valley. The horse reared, nearly throwing its rider. Next one's lower, Mara called. Your choice. The two men exchanged looks, calculated the odds, decided they weren't getting paid enough to die on a dark mountainside for a woman they didn't particularly care about anyway. They turned their horses and retreated. Mara waited until she couldn't hear them anymore, then lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking again. She'd just shot at people. Actually shot at them. Her grandmother had taught her to heal, not to hurt. But out here, sometimes healing meant making sure the wolves couldn't get to the people you were protecting. Is it safe? Caleb's mother called. For now, but we need to keep moving. They rode through what was left of the night, slower now to spare the horses. As dawn broke gray and cold, they approached Copper Springs. The small mining town was just waking up, smoke rising from chimneys. Early shift workers heading to the shafts. They found the boarding house, paid for a room. Caleb's mother collapsed on the bed, finally letting exhaustion win. Mara sat by the window, rifle across her lap, watching the street. 2 hours later, a rider approached. Mara tensed, bringing up the rifle. Then she saw who it was and felt relief flood through her. Caleb. Alive. Looking like he'd been through hell, but alive. She met him at the door. Are they? Lost them in the canyon country east of town. Doubled back after dark. He looked past her. Ma? Sleeping. Exhausted but unharmed. He sagged against the doorframe. We did it. We did. Mara checked him over. New bruises, a cut on his forehead. Nothing serious. You hurt? I'll live. He looked at her, really looked at her. You shot at Thorne's men. I shot near them. Important distinction. Still, he almost smiled. My grandmother would be proud and terrified. Mine too. But they stood there for a moment, the adrenaline finally draining away, leaving behind exhaustion and relief, and the awareness of how close they'd come to losing everything. What now? Caleb asked. Now we wait for the marshal and for Martin. Mara moved to the window. And we hope they both show up before Thorne figures out where we are. The telegraph operator from before was already at his post. Caleb sent another message to Marshal Winston. Situation escalated. Witness and victims in Copper Springs. Request immediate assistance. The response came faster this time. Arriving today. Stand by. Today, Mara said. We just have to survive until today. Caleb's mother woke around noon, disoriented but intact. They got her food, water, let her wash up. She looked at both of them with clear eyes, those miraculous, healed eyes, and said, "So, what happens now?" "Marshal's coming," Caleb told her. "Should be here by evening." "And the surveyor? Martin?" "We don't know. He said 3 days. This is day 3. As if summoned by the conversation, a rider appeared on the main street. Thin, nervous, ink-stained fingers clutching his horse's reins too tight. Thomas Martin had kept his word. Marshal Winston arrived 2 hours later, and he brought 3 deputies with him, hard-faced men with federal badges and eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by local corruption. Winston listened to their story without interrupting. All of it. The poisoned cattle, the burned barn, the kidnapping, the bribed surveyor. Caleb's mother testified about being held prisoner. Mara testified about seeing the cellar, about Thorne's threats. Martin testified about taking $500 to share advance information about the railroad route. When they were done, Winston sat back and was quiet for a long time. "That's enough," he said finally. "I'm placing Garrett Thorne under arrest for bribery, corruption, kidnapping, and conspiracy to defraud. His man Cutter, too, for kidnapping and assault. Anyone else involved better start talking, because I'm not done cleaning house." He stood, strapped on his gun belt. "Let's go finish this." They rode back to Ridgewater together, the whole group. Marshal, deputies, witnesses. Strength in numbers. Safety and federal authority. The town was different in daylight after the chaos of last night. Subdued. Wary. People standing in doorways watching as the marshal's group rode in. The remains of Thorne's cattle were being rounded up. The warehouse was still a burned-out shell, and at the center of it all, Garrett Thorne's house sat on its hill like a fortress that didn't know it had already fallen. Winston rode straight up to the front door, knocked with authority. A servant answered, took one look at the badges, and went pale. "Get Garrett Thorne, now!" The servant disappeared, returned with Thorne himself, still dressed from yesterday, looking exhausted and angry. His expression changed when he saw the federal badges. Surprise, calculation. Then a mask of pleasant confusion. "Marshal, what's this about?" "Garrett Thorne, you're under arrest for bribery of a public official, conspiracy to defraud, kidnapping, and about a dozen other charges I'll enumerate once we get you to a federal courthouse." Winston pulled out handcuffs. "You can come quietly, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice." "This is ridiculous. On what evidence?" "Testimony of Thomas Martin, surveyor, who will state under oath that you paid him $500 for advance information about railroad routes. Testimony of Mrs. Vance, who was held prisoner in your cellar. Testimony of Miss Holloway, who witnessed your threats, plus documentation of suspicious land purchases that just happened to align perfectly with that same railroad route." Winston stepped forward. "Now hold out your hands." Thorne's face went purple. "You can't do this. I have lawyers, connections. This is harassment. Save it for the judge." Winston snapped the cuffs on. "Where's your man Cutter?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Obstruction of justice. That's another charge." Winston looked at his deputies. "Search the house. Find Cutter. And anyone else who was involved in holding Mrs. Vance." They found Cutter hiding in an upstairs bedroom, packing a bag. He tried to run, made it to the window before a deputy tackled him. They dragged him out fighting, cuffed him, threw him on a horse. Reed they found in the cellar where Mara had left him, still unconscious with a spectacular bruise on his forehead. A doctor checked him over, declared him concussed, but alive. They cuffed him too, though Winston seemed less interested in the drunk nephew than in the men who'd actually made the decisions. The whole town watched as Thorne was led away, watched as the man who'd controlled Ridgewater for years was reduced to just another prisoner in federal custody, shouting about lawyers and rights, and how this was all a mistake. Polk stood outside his store, face ashen. "What happens now?" "Now the law does its job," Winston said. "And anyone else involved in this scheme better start cooperating, because I'm going through every transaction, every deal, every piece of property Thorne touched. And if I find more corruption, more victims, there will be more arrests. People scattered. Some to hide evidence, some to prepare testimony, some just to process what had happened. Winston, his prisoners, and all the witnesses started the long ride to the federal courthouse 2 days away. It was a solemn procession. Thorne in handcuffs, silent now, his face a mask. Cutter glaring at nothing. Reed still dazed from the concussion. And behind them, the people whose testimony would bury them. The trial took a week, longer than anyone expected, but Thorne's lawyers fought hard. They tried every trick, challenged the evidence, attacked the witnesses' credibility, argued that Thorne was being railroaded by jealous competitors. But the evidence was overwhelming. Martin testified in detail about the bribe, showed bank records, correspondence, even a receipt Thorne had stupidly made him sign. Caleb's mother testified about being dragged from her home, held prisoner, threatened. The bruises on her wrists were still visible. Mara testified about Thorne's attempted bribery, about seeing the cellar, about his explicit threats. Caleb testified about the poisoned cattle, the burned barn, the systematic campaign to drive him off his land. And then the prosecution brought in others. Ranchers Thorne had driven out, families who'd lost everything, a paper trail of corruption that went back years. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty. On all counts. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who looked like she'd seen every kind of criminal and wasn't impressed by any of them. She sentenced Thorne to 20 years in federal prison. Cutter got 15 as an accomplice. Reed, being young and mostly just drunk and stupid, got 5 years in a lecture about choosing better role models. All of Thorne's assets were seized. His property was auctioned off to pay restitution to the people he'd defrauded. The ranch he'd bought from struggling families went back to those families. The businesses he'd controlled were sold to new owners. The railroad deal fell apart. Without Thorne's manipulated land corridor, the railroad company chose a different route through a different valley. Property values in Ridgewater stabilized, returned to normal. And slowly, carefully, the town started to rebuild itself into something that wasn't defined by one man's greed. Caleb stood on his porch 6 months later, looking out at land that was finally, truly his. The well had been cleaned and reinforced with new stone. The barn was rebuilt, bigger than before. Cattle grazed in pastures that were thick with spring grass. His mother sat in a rocking chair doing needlework by the afternoon light. Her vision was perfect now, maintained by regular treatments from Mara. She looked up when she heard footsteps and smiled. Mara was walking up from the direction of her grandmother's cabin, carrying a basket. Brought that salve for the mare's leg, and some of the honey root tea your mother likes. But you didn't have to ride all the way out here for that, Caleb said, but he was smiling. I was coming anyway. She set the basket on the porch railing. Your mother invited me for supper, again. Did she now? He looked at his mother, who was suddenly very focused on her needlework. I'm a sociable woman, his mother said innocently. Is it wrong to want company? When you've invited her 3 times this week, yes. I like her, and the cabin gets lonely with just the 2 of us. She set down her needlework. Besides, someone needs to make sure you're feeding yourself properly. Left to your own devices, you'd eat nothing but jerky and coffee. Mara laughed. She's not wrong. They went inside together. The cabin was warm, filled with the smell of bread baking and something savory simmering on the stove. Caleb's mother had been cooking all afternoon, preparing enough food to feed 6 people instead of 3. Over dinner, they talked about the ranch, which was thriving, about Mara's practice in town, which was growing, about the upcoming town council election, where for the first time in years, people were actually debating ideas instead of just doing what Thorne wanted. After the dishes were cleared, Caleb's mother excused herself, claiming exhaustion, though everyone knew she was just giving them space. She went to bed early, leaving Caleb and Mara alone at the kitchen table. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Mara said, I've been thinking. About what? About what comes next, for us. She looked at him. We've been doing this dance for months now. The dinners, the visits, helping each other with work. And I keep wondering if we're just going to keep dancing or if we're going to actually talk about what this is. Caleb set down his coffee cup. What do you want it to be? I want it to be real, not just convenient, not just 2 people who went through hell together and are now, what? Friends? Partners? Something more? Something more, Caleb said immediately. Definitely something more. Then say it. He stood, moved around the table to where she sat. I love you, Mara Holloway. I think I've loved you since you showed up at my door in the middle of the night with that crazy plan to save my mother's sight. Maybe even before that. Maybe from the first time I saw you in town, and you looked at me like I was just another person, not the cursed, impossible Caleb Vance. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. That's quite a speech. I'm not done. He knelt beside her chair. I want you in my life. Not just as someone who stops by for supper. As my partner. My wife. The person I build a future with. He took her hand. Will you marry me? She laughed and cried at the same time. You're doing it wrong again. How? You're supposed to let me answer before you assume I'm going to say yes. Are you going to say yes? Yes, you stubborn, impossible, perfect man. Yes. He kissed her then, right there in the kitchen, with his mother probably listening from the bedroom and the stars watching through the window. And Mara kissed him back, tasting salt from tears and coffee and home. They were married in late summer in a ceremony that half of Ridgewater attended. The church was packed. Even Marshal Winston showed up, bringing a federal commendation for bravery and a bottle of excellent whiskey. Polk gave Mara away since she had no father, and he felt guilty about all the times he'd been short with her at the store. Caleb's mother cried happy tears and kept saying, I told you so, to anyone who would listen. The reception was held at the Vance Ranch, with tables set up outside and food enough for an army. People danced, told stories, toasted the bride and groom with increasing enthusiasm as the whiskey flowed. Late in the evening, Mara found herself standing apart from the crowd, looking out at the valley spread below. Caleb found her there, slipped his arm around her waist. Having second thoughts? He asked. Not even one. She leaned into him. I was just thinking about how different everything is now. 6 months ago, I was alone. Your ranch was failing. Thorne controlled everything. And now we won. We did. She turned to face him. Not just against Thorne, against everyone who said we couldn't, everyone who counted us out. We proved them all wrong. We'll keep proving them wrong, he said. Every single day. His mother appeared slightly unsteady from celebration. You two are too serious. It's a party. Go dance. They danced. Awkwardly at first, neither of them particularly skilled, but they figured it out together. And as the night wore on and the stars wheeled overhead, Mara felt something settle deep in her bones. This was home. This was family. This was the life she'd fought for and won. Mara moved into the Vance Ranch, bringing her plants and books and all the knowledge her grandmother had passed down. She and Caleb's mother converted one of the outbuildings into a proper clinic where people could come for treatment without judgment or fear. Word spread. People came from neighboring towns, from as far as 2 days' ride away. Seeking help for ailments doctors couldn't or wouldn't treat. Mara treated them all, charging what they could afford, accepting payment in goods or labor when they had no money. Caleb's ranch prospered. With the restitution money from Thorne's seized assets, he was able to pay off every debt and buy additional land. He hired workers, built a bigger operation, became known as a fair employer and a shrewd businessman. Together they built something that would last, a legacy of fighting for what was right, of refusing to accept the world as it was and working to make it better. Caleb's mother lived to see grandchildren, 4 of them, 2 boys and 2 girls, each one as stubborn as their parents. She taught them to read, to question authority, to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. And on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the children were asleep, Caleb and Mara would sit on the porch together, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, just being together in the life they'd fought so hard to build. You know what the best part is? Mara said one such evening, maybe 5 years after the trial. What's that? This. Right here. The fact that we made it. She took his hand. I spent so long thinking I'd always be alone. The outcast, the weird girl in the woods, and now I have you, and your mother, and our children, and a whole town that respects me instead of just tolerating me. They always should have respected you. They were just too blind to see it. Maybe, but I'm glad I stuck around long enough for them to figure it out. Caleb squeezed her hand. Me too. Years later, when people told the story of how Ridgewater was saved from Garrett Thorne, they'd talk about the brave rancher who refused to quit, about the woman who could cure blindness and face down corruption with equal skill, about the surveyor who found his conscience, about the federal marshal who believed in justice. But the people who'd lived through it, the ones who remembered how it really was, they told a different story. They talked about two people who refused to be invisible, who looked at an impossible situation and decided to fight anyway, who chose each other when the world told them to choose themselves. They talked about how love wasn't always clean or easy or simple. Sometimes it was born in desperation and forged in fire. Sometimes it was two damaged people deciding they were stronger together than apart. And they talked about how winning didn't mean everything turned perfect. It meant you survived. It meant you built something worth fighting for. It meant you woke up every day and chose to keep going. Mara understood that now. Understood that the victory wasn't in defeating Thorne, though that mattered. The victory was in everything that came after. The life they built, the family they created, the example they set. And as she sat on that porch in the twilight, watching her children play in the yard and her husband whittle by lamplight and her mother-in-law read by the fading light, she knew one thing for certain. She had been invisible once, overlooked, dismissed, but not anymore. Now she was the woman who'd saved a town, who'd built a practice, who'd raised a family, who'd loved and been loved in return. And that was worth more than all of Garrett Thorne's wealth and power combined. That was everything.